Yeah, this is too late. Sorry. This is unreasonably late. I know. This is absurdly late. This is very, very late. This is too late. I won't be this late next time. That's all I can say. This is too late. I'm sorry. This is very late. It does not matter how many people I was trying to save, how many burning buildings I was carrying old women out of. It doesn't matter. I'm sorry. That was way too late. I'm sorry. All right. Now I have a request, which is let's get the stream likes to 200. I am sorry. I don't have a good reason for being so late. There's no good reason. I was trying to wrap up something and then it just took a lot longer. And I could have just taken a break and gone to start stream, but it's just the way it is. All right. Sorry. I hope you guys had fun discussing something while I wasn't here. Honestly, how much do I add to the discussion anyway, huh? Probably not a lot, right? I probably don't even... You know what? I'm willing to bet that you guys have a much more fruitful discussion just amongst yourselves in chat without me around. So, who's to say I even inconvenienced you guys that much? So, Garverk, thank you very much. This late give every 500 live subs a membership. Can I even give people memberships? How does that work? I don't know if I can. All right. Yeah, guys, let's like the stream. Let's get it up to 300 real quick. So, we got some things to talk about, namely the insane chapter that we just got. Spoonty 4 Paradise? It's a weird name. You got nothing to say either. Okay. Miguel says Garp greater than old Yonko. Okay, so we got some fun thing. We got a lot of fun shit to discuss this chapter because you know what I realized? Here's what I realized. What I realized with this chapter, right, is that this is just what One Piece is going to be from here on out. Not just exciting stuff, but I realized that we're just going to be on a train where every other chapter pretty much we get a character coming in, doing something absolutely insane that has everybody rejuggling and reorganizing their guesses of who the strongest characters in the story are. Because, you know, if you time travel back 1 week, in just 1 week, it was like, man, this idiot Garp sailing off to Hachinosu by himself. He's gonna get packed up. Forget Blackbeard, Shiryu will pack him up. And now it's just like, holy shit. People are already putting old Garp right up there with the current Yonko, and people, God knows how strong they're placing Prime Garp. Nerve AMV Maker says, if Luffy gets an opportunity to redeem his failure and save his crew, so this is in reference to my latest video, I think it's a very good video. It's at least a very exciting idea, if you guys want to go check that out. It's about how Luffy's final Conqueror's Haki trigger could be through a future side vision, could be triggered by a future side vision of seeing something terrible happen to his crew, a la the Shanks scene. Do you think the crew will also get a moment of redemption and either save Luffy or someone important to him? I would love to see that. I really, really hope that we would get to see that in Wano. Here's the main reason I hope that we would get to see that in Wano. In Wano, a huge, huge theme and a huge parallel that was being played up was basically between Oden and the Scabbards and Luffy and the Straw Hats. So Luffy has 9 Straw Hats, Oden had 9 Scabbards. And the big thing that was being stressed throughout, even from Zou onwards, and was very prevalent for most of Wano, was the Scabbards felt some degree of failure in terms of how they had lived up to their responsibility as Oden's retainers. So they felt ashamed of the fact that they had to be protected by Oden all the way down to the very end, whereas it should have been them who was protecting Oden in some sense, right? Or at least it should have been mutual or reciprocal, right? So that was the Scabbard's biggest pain throughout the arc, and I'm going to be honest, they really didn't. I mean, they fixed it. They did come back and save Wano and carry out Oden's legacy, but they got hard carried, let's be honest, by other characters that they brought in, you know. So I wouldn't, I mean, the Scabbards ran up against Kaido and got fucked up, so that's basically what happened. It didn't exactly do Oden proud in that moment. But all of that is to say, right, I'm wandering a little bit there, but all of that is to say is that was what was really built up regarding the Scabbards, that they failed in some sense as Oden's subordinates. And then you've got this modern storyline with Luffy and the Straw Hats, and it's been talked about, you know, since the post-time skip that Luffy has so much faith in his crew now. He's like, I'm not worried in the New World because I have you guys behind me and everything like that. I was just surprised to see that none of that was really relevant in Wano. they all showed up to Onigashima and all the Strides did their own thing, but it was pretty much as usual, right? There's not much difference between what they did here versus in Dressrosa, which is they cleaned up downstairs while Luffy took out Kaido. So I just felt as though I felt like Wano thematically was the best opportunity to have a sort of parallel running line between Oden and the Scabbards and Luffy and the Straw Hats, to have the Straw Hats kind of step up and show why they are the Pirate King's retainers, essentially, why they are Luffy's Scabbards and why they are able to help him in a certain way, right? And I think a lot of that goes back to everybody already seeing the parallels between Wano and Thriller Bark, and Thriller Bark was the arc where the Straw Hats carried the heaviest load on Luffy's behalf because Luffy was sidelined the entire arc, so the Straw Hats had to actually hold back Oars and Moria basically till Luffy was ready to get back into the action. So I was hoping for something like that in Wano. I didn't think it was like a necessary part of Wano, but I thought that thematically that would have easily been the best arc and the strongest in terms of tying together ideas to have the Straw Hats really put in work on Luffy's behalf, right? Instead of, like, Luffy was out of commission a few times that arc, instead of having random-ass Yamato, who we just fucking met 5 minutes ago, who's crying about her daddy issues like we're supposed to care, instead of throwing her onto the rooftop to hold off Kaido for a little bit, instead of having, the Scabbards fighting Kaido on the rooftop for so long, fucking everybody got a crack at Kaido for a little bit, right? How about the Straw Hats? How about the Straw Hats hold him off for a little bit while Luffy's getting his shit together? I don't know, I think that would be good. Anyway, I Can Drive, congrats, says... Wait, what did he say? Kind of scroll a little bit. You should make a Garp analysis for Tuesday. Oh, it's coming. It's coming. It's in the works. That's what I was writing, if that helps. If that helps at all, that's why I was late. Will says, hope you have a good stream, Mr. Morj. Thank you very much. Appreciate your content, even when it's late. Thanks, man. Appreciate it. On that note, let's get the stream likes up to 300, because Will said so. Cigarverk says, after Garp thing, I'm pretty sure Pin Zoro was top 1. Yeah, what if Pin Zoro was like the second coming of Ryuma? What defeated him? It's kind of sad. Like, what happened to Pin Zoro? Colin Parker says, yo, Morj, any thoughts on Blackbeard becoming a king in order to get invited to Marijoa? That was the one weird thing about this chapter. I didn't really understand it. Maybe it relates to him having Blackbeard's wanted poster. I really, really don't understand it because my understanding of Blackbeard was basically he's just of the mentality of fuck the world government, fuck the Marines, I'll wreck all of that shit, right? He says as much to Hannibal, he says as much to Sengoku and Garp at the climax of Marineford. So it's just a little bit odd to me that his scheme has turned around to, I want to be a king. The idea that maybe he's trying to get into Marijoa is interesting. But at the same time, then, is that the... I could see where that's coming from, because if we backtrack, right, a similar little pattern, right? Why did Blackbeard try to become a Shichibukai? He tried to become a Shichibukai because he wanted to just sneak into Impel Down, right? Get access to Impel Down, get what he needed, get out. So maybe this is a bit of a replay of that scenario of Blackbeard basically being like, I become a king, I get invited to Marijoa at some point, I get what I want, and then I peace out. But it just feels a little weirder at this stage in the story because it's like, dude, you know how fucking stupid they would have to be to let you into Marijoa at this? Like, it's like, fool me once, shame on us, but fool us twice. Like, it would be fucking... The world government would basically be by far the stupidest characters in the entire story, in a story that has a lot of stupid characters making stupid decisions. Ali H, thanks for being a Yonko tier member for 5 months. Yo, Lorge, I appreciate the way you transition into sponsors in your videos. It's hilarious. Thanks, man. Also, which Straw Hat would you want to get a major arc before end of story? Before I would have said, I think Wano for Zoro would have been great, but now I'm saying let's get Usopp, Elbaf, right? Elbaf, Usopp, just because that seems the most set up. I would personally love to see another really big arc for Nami, because I feel like Nami was originally one of the most important characters among the Straw Hats in the story, and her importance has been neutered to some degree over time. It's definitely been neutered to some degree over time, but at the same time, there's nothing set up for Nami, so I feel like it's not as important for her to get an arc as it is for Usopp, in my opinion. Garrett Clerk, thanks for being a Yonko tier member for 3 months. No way, I finally made a stream. Yeah, everybody, let's like the stream. We all agree. And, yeah, it's just, it's, definitely the right message. I support that message. Big Bro Cook says, do you think that we could get Viz to do a retranslation if it was paired with a colored release? Please say yes. Also, you should watch Gundam. I will never watch Gundam because mech shows just aren't my thing. Code Geass was the closest I ever came to actually enjoying a mech show, but I just don't enjoy mech stuff. Side note, random side thought, I like playing with the idea of what would be good matchups between the Blackbeard Pirates and the Straw Hat Pirates. I feel like Avalo Pizarro's got a good shot going up against Frankie at this point because his ability is essentially making a giant mech, right? He can control an island, just an upgraded version of Pika's ability, but we'll pretend that doesn't matter. So imagine Frankie in a giant mech fighting against an island. I think that'd be pretty cool. As for Viz doing a retranslation, no, I just don't think that's happening. A retranslation just for color. I'm curious why this is popping up so much because that's something that was brought up last stream as well. Why is everyone just now deciding that Viz needs to retranslate? Goomba Boomba says, everyone talking about Garp this and Garp that. Meanwhile, I'm hyped about Pinzoro's talking... I just read Pinzoro. It's Pizarro's talking Hachinosu's skull. I think people aren't as hyped for that simply because we all realize that Pizarro's... Or at least at the moment, it seems like Pizarro is probably not one of Blackbeard's top brass. And so when we understand that someone's not one of the tippy-top most important... top 3 in a Yonko's crew, we just generally understand that their abilities aren't going to, however flashy they are, aren't going to matter that much in the grand scheme of things. So, for example, if you swap things and said, if you took Katarina Devon's fruit and you said, well, that's actually, I don't know, if Katarina Devon's fruit was actually, like, Ben Beckman's fruit or something, I think people would be excited for that. Maybe Ben Beckman's a bad example because we know he's, like, very Haki-based, but... Do you get what I'm saying? I think if you just took Katarina Devon's fruit and put it in the hands of a character that we had expected to be very strong, like a Katakuri or something like that, initially, then I think people would have been very excited that, oh my god, he can turn into anything, he can shapeshift into anything, that's crazy. But because it's a character that we expect to be one of the lower stride matchups, we're just not as interested with Pizarro's ability or Katarina Devon's ability and stuff like that. In terms of combat hype, Katarina Devon has tremendous potential for plot twists at the very least. Also, Garp stole the flying ship idea from the Sunny. Yeah, that's pretty funny. I like that quite a bit. JK Kane says, what's your favorite Devil Fruit reveal in 1080? My favorite of the new Devil Fruits? I think the Pirate Island one. It's just funny because it looks like a skull anyway. It's the most large-scale ability. Again, the potential of fighting against... Frankie, I did just say that people aren't as hyped for it because it's a lower tier member, but all the Devil Fruit ability reveals in this chapter were of lower level characters. So out of all of these lower level characters, I'm most excited for that one. The Outback Pandas, thank you very much for the 20. Maybe it's just me, but the Blackbeard Pirates fruits seem so lame. Big, clear, strong. Pika 2.0. The most interesting fruits at this point are Devon's and the Mythical Zoan that they gave to the horse. Yeah, and as I was just saying, Devon's, it's a little tricky because we know that she's not going to fight a Monster Trio member or something. My bet is personally Robin, just because it would be an interesting fight between her abilities and Robin's. But beyond that, I get what you're saying, that the Blackbeard Pirates fruits seem lame, considering that they've supposedly been hunting fruits and farming some of the best fruits for a while. But you guys got to keep in mind that these guys are already level 6 prisoners from Impel Down, so their base fighting ability is probably very, very high. And then, also, how come they don't have beef with Shiryu? Shouldn't they all, this is a random thought, shouldn't they all have beef with Shiryu? Because you guys are forgetting this, but they're all in level 6, and Shiryu was known as this demonic jailer that tortured and really hurt the prisoners of Impel Down. So from your, imagine this, you were locked up for God knows how long, the dude that was probably inflicting the most pain and suffering on you, and basically was an asshole guard to you, was Shiryu, and now you're let free and you're all just buddy with this guy. I don't know, I feel like they'd all hold some sort of resentment towards Shiryu in my opinion. But anyway, because it's just, he's the, whatever. Okay. I get it. I think at the end of the day, what we have to remember is that their fruits are just going to matter for fighting against the Straw Hats, right? So they ultimately can't have two broken devil fruits. Their devil fruits can't be the best things ever just because, Brook's gonna have to beat one of them. Nami's gonna have to find a way to beat one of them, right? And also, as far as things go, let's dial back a couple. Yeah, if we dial back a little bit, right? We just came off a Yonko crew where their abilities were basically just being a mammoth or being a Pachycephalosaurus, or being a fucking Triceratops or some shit, right? So, it's not, Like, I would take transforming into an island over transforming into, a saber-toothed tiger, personally. Um, Teleportation, diseases, these are all strong abilities. It's just we're not going to be getting admiral level fruit abilities and stuff for this crowd. And, and if you want to dial back even one more arc before Wano, we're looking at the previous Yonko crew's abilities, and, their strongest guy had a mochi fruit. And then below that, you had a biscuit fruit user. So, as far as Yonko crews go, these guys are still, they've got good abilities across the board. I'd say where I'm most disappointed is in Shiryu's ability at the moment, just because invisibility, not only does it not seem like an imposing ability for a Yonko first mate right off the bat, it's an ability we've already seen once before for a fodder character, for a fodder pre-time skip villain, essentially, right? So it's like, it doesn't feel very impactful to see Absalom's ability reused for potentially Zoro's final matchup or second to last matchup, or at least one of his final 3 matchups or something. So let's hope that we got something more up Shiryu's sleeve. Maybe his sword ate a fruit. Maybe the clear fruit's awakening is really strong or something like that. We don't know. But yeah, I would say this, that out of all the Yonko crews, the only crew that has devil fruit abilities that seem immediately really, really strong intuitively are the Whitebeard Pirates, right? So even if we ignore Whitebeard, who had the Guru Guru no Mi, right? Aside from that, you have Marco, who has the Phoenix fruit. To date, one of, if not the coolest devil fruit reveal in the entire story. You have the Diamond fruit, which is just intuitively an extremely, extremely strong ability, right? The toughest substance possible. And then you got the Flame fruit, which is, again, an extremely strong Admiral class, Logia type ability. So, but as far as other Yonko crews go, I'd say the Blackbeard Pirates have good devil fruits. Wisdom Minari, thank you very much for the 20. Garp is pulling his own marine forward. He made a massive attack. He got his ship in the middle of the enemy island. All his officers got introductions one at a time. He's here to save someone that's like a son to him. Goner. That is actually a really, really, really good way to break down the situation. This is a mini little marine forward that's playing out. It's just the reverse. Isn't that so interesting? Garp's gonna experience a taste of his own medicine, I suppose. It's a smaller version of Marine Ford, but yeah, it's the Marines pulling up into a pirate's territory this time, trying to save, someone very close to them, a rescue mission. And, yeah, they're gonna lose because we know Blackbeard's endgame and Garp doesn't have to be. John Ross says Blackbeard, Jesus Burgess, Van Augur, Lafitte, Katarina, Doc Q, Stronger, Kuzan are the available Blackbeard pirates who could be headed to Egghead. Yeah, I imagine that some of them are going to show up. Right, so I feel like we'll get to see the Garp Pirates. I was about to say, I did say Garp Pirates. We're about to see the Garp squad go wild for a little bit before the hammer comes down. So I guess it's a bit of a dramatic setup, right? That we're waiting on Blackbeard's return, I assume, or Kuzan's return, or something like that. Okay, hold on. I have to pull up the supers tab. We got a lot going on. Guys, let's get the stream likes up to 400. Damn, you guys really like this chapter. There's a lot of people here. I like this chapter too. Let me say this. So I got spoiled on one panel yesterday, right? One panel made it to my Twitter feed. It was a sketchy-ass version of Garp doing the punch. And I honestly couldn't believe my eyes. I could not believe my eyes. It just looked so absurd. It's just I did a double take. I think there's very few times recently that the Shanks' divine departure on Kid was definitely shocking, but I did know, I'd already seen the spoiler that Shanks defeats Kid, I think. I forget the order. Maybe I saw the image first, or maybe I forget exactly, but that was pretty insane, but that was insane because of what Shanks did, like who he did it to. This was insane just because of the visual. We've never seen a visual effect of just a basic punch, right? There's no Devil Fruit enlarging his fist or anything like that. He's not clashing with somebody else to create a sky split or anything. It's just a punch, and it's just randomly creating a gigantic crater from a distance. This is the type of shit, for context, that Elisabello used to charge up for like 45 minutes to do. You know what I mean? Okay, Leo Recto, thank you. He says, so, Mr. Morj, you still laughing at my Bogard power scale? I mean, he's probably stronger than I thought, but I just don't think it's going to be strong in the grand scheme of things. Maybe we get a good Bogard versus Shiryu moment. Teaspoon T4 Paradis, I get the sense that you're trying to say something, because this time you donated 99 cents. I think you're trying to say something, trying to comment something, but it's just, you're fucking it up somewhere along the way. So, best of luck to you next try. I would love to respond to what you're trying to say, but I don't know what you're trying to say. Shonen Empire says, what's crazy is how many top tiers were held back in Marineford. Now we just have Mihawk and Dragon to see. The decades-long build-up is paying off. Yes. Dude, that's just what every chapter is going to be, or every few chapters is going to be from now on. We're going to get a crazy, insane feat for characters just one by one going down the list. And the community is just going to go nuts every single time. And yeah, just the debates and the hyping and all of that stuff is going to be so much fun to read as time goes on. For this final segment of the story, it's going to, because for now we're going to get to see everyone flex, and then the final war is going to be everyone actually fighting each other, so it's going to be even more exciting. Yeah, the decades-long build-up is paying off. I agree. What's funny is that people forget, but in Marineford, Garp was always low-key. It was easy to write him off because he didn't do that much, and he himself is talking about how old he is and out of shape he is and how his powers declined so much. So we're like, okay, we know Prime Garp is probably really up there, but how strong is old Garp? It's easy to forget, but in Marineford, Garp had the best Haki, clearly the best Haki out of all of the admirals there. Right? All of the admirals in their prime, Garp had the best Haki. Why do I say this? Because every single admiral, they got their shot at Marco. Right? You saw Kizaru fighting Marco. You saw Akainu fighting Marco. I guess Aokiji didn't attack Marco. He got attacked by Marco. But all these other characters, like, you could see, nothing hurts Marco. Only Garp's punch hurt Marco. That's the only character, that's the only time that Marco, without Kairoseki, was hurt in Marineford. It was when Garp punched him. Marco took a full head-on punch from Akainu, was not phased. I'm not saying Marco beats Akainu or anything like that. I'm not even saying Akainu is stronger than current Garp. I'm not saying that, right? They've got Devil Fruit abilities and all this crazy shit. Maybe Akainu's become stronger. I'm just saying that if you look at Marineford, objectively, Garp's Haki was portrayed as the best on the Marine side, because he's the only one that could actually physically damage Marco. Nicholas Sealstern says, bringing back an old meme, don't forget who Morj compared to Rosa Parks to in One Piece. What? Morj compared Rosa Parks to in One Piece, lol. I actually don't remember this. I do remember this joke, but I don't remember what the context was. Morj compared Rosa Parks to in One Piece. Who did I compare Rosa? Can someone give me context for this? Also, what is Shanks and Gorosei's dynamic if he's a big good? Oh, you're saying like they're on the same side? I mean, I just think that Shanks is a character that everybody respects, and commanding respect even from the opposition, right? That's part of being the big good, in a sense. It just depends on what the dynamics are in any given story. Daniel Allen says, this chapter was absolute peak for me as a longtime Garp fan. Confirmed Advanced Conqueror's Haki is great. This may be a top 5 I'm him moment in all of One Piece. Yeah, I really, really enjoyed this chapter for sure. This is probably the easily one of the... I just feel like the panel of the, the Galactic Punch or whatever, that's just one of the most visually impactful. It's just anytime we see a whole new visual depiction of how crazy Conqueror's Haki can look, it's gonna be mind blowing. Like Oda's really smart, I think, with how he chooses to hype different characters in different ways, because with Shanks, it was just like, okay, it's who Shanks did it against, right? It was against a character that many people were starting to say was above Yonko First Commanders, was close to Admiral level and stuff like that. And then Shanks comes in and one-shots him. With Garp, it's a visual depiction of at least a range of a Conqueror's Haki punch that we've never seen before, right? Because Conqueror's Haki, we get it. It's the whole idea is that you advance Conqueror's Haki, you have a really strong attack that causes a huge amount of damage without even making contact. The range of it is absurd. It's just so much bigger than anything we've ever seen in terms of just the distance from Garp's fist to the earth below him, McDonald says, are you liking Asa as much as Denji? I'm loving the way she's being written so far. Do you think Usopp will develop minor future sight or just great observation Haki? Asa right now is easily the best written female character that I have seen in manga in a long ass time. In a long ass time. Maybe period. Out of the manga that I've read, and I haven't read, like, let's say these action sort of oriented manga, right? Easily the best written female character, because we just get so much more focus on her. Like, she is being treated as the main character, and not only is she being treated as the main character, the writing around her feels much more realistic in terms of the types of thoughts she's having, the perspectives she's having. They feel more like a fucking normal ass human being would have, rather than, you know, a lot of manga characters, I think they're wrapped up in a fantasy world where, like, a lot of their stuff is about their grand. They're more tropey, I think, in terms of the cliches of what they go through and stuff like that. Like, how many times we've seen not living up to the clan or the family's legacy or something like that, or wanting revenge for something, or, you know, stuff like that. Whereas Asa's just, like, the way she thinks and the way her perspective is and everything is just, it very much is like it's like a normal person, right? The thoughts and the mental conflicts that she goes through, and questioning herself and trying to question how her interactions with people go, and why she's like this, or why other people are treating her like this, or why she keeps going through these cycles and everything like that. It's just a lot more real than what you typically see out of manga, and especially out of female manga characters, who I think are just generally, this extends to everything, shonen, seinen, etc., right? And I definitely like Asa significantly more than I liked Denji in part 1. Denji was not my favorite part of part 1. I think Denji at the end of his character arc in part 1, so the Denji we see in part 2, I like this character a lot. But Denji in part 1, I didn't care for him that much. I like the other characters definitely more than Denji in part 1. Whereas in part 2, Asa's a great character right off the bat. So, who do I like more between Asa and Denji right now? It's hard to say. Denji's just more fun to read, right? At this point, he's a very at this point, because he's gotten past so much of the bullshit that made him an irritating character to read at some points in part 1. Denji right now is so much fun to read. Asa's just there's more substance to what's going on with her character right now, so it's two different things. And Asa's also very funny. Stormfox says Garp is raising his death flags. Yeah, it's just, we're at a stage in One Piece I'm just not even gonna talk about death flags, man. It's like, how many death flags did Kinemon raise, you know? Titanium Dragon says, who's who is Suru's son? Think about it. Yeah, maybe. I've no way of saying either here or there with that. I have no idea. Why is he necessarily who's? Sorry, words. Why is should I be looking at Suru's granddaughter and making that connection? Osohe says something it isn't Conquerors, probably is. So, to clarify, again, Black Lightning does not mean Conquerors. At least that's not confirmed throughout the story. And if it does mean Conquerors, then it's wildly inconsistent, because you have several instances. You've got the Scabbards, Ulti, Lucci, etc. Lots of examples of Black Sparks, Black Lightning coming out of attacks that are not Conquerors coding, that just aren't. The reason this seems clearly like Conquerors is because the gap between the Earth and Garp's punch is fucking huge, right? That's something that only really makes sense from Conquerors, because the big thing that's emphasized with Conquerors is the huge gap in terms of contact, because just the level of Haki is so ridiculous. So it just doesn't really make sense to be doing it with armament Haki, but maybe Oda clarifies it next chapter. Zaibatsu says, feel bad for anyone who doubted this dude was close to Roger in his prime, like the manga has suggested. Doing this with one punch while old is crazy. So, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I think I was always one of the doubters of Garp, because if you asked me between Roger and Whitebeard and Garp, who's third on that list, I always put Garp third in my head. I still think Garp is probably not as strong as Roger and Whitebeard, because they were just hyped a little bit more, in my opinion. Like, they're called the strongest, repeatedly referred to as basically these two are equal, they're the strongest. Garp's feats are that he ran Roger really close many times. But at the same time, you know, maybe I was underestimating him. It's possible. We never know at this point, right? I will say between Garp and Roger, my argument had always been that, yeah, we get it. Garp and Roger came close to killing each other many times. Garp came close to cornering the Pirate King many times. To me, it was like, does that mean that they're equal, though? Because you look at Luffy's story, there are multiple characters that you could say the same thing about Luffy, that we know Luffy by the end of the story is going to be stronger than, right? It's like, just because Smoker nearly captured Luffy many times, that doesn't mean that end of story Luffy is going to be equal to end of, like, they're not going to be in the same plane, right? Even fucking Kaido, right? Kaido nearly killed Luffy many times. That doesn't change the fact that by the time Luffy's Pirate King, he's going to be head and shoulders above Kaido. So, to me, it was just, it didn't mean that much. I think the thing that really solidified Garp's status is probably close to / comparable to, or maybe even almost equal to Roger, was the Rocks incident and how he was talked about there. Although even there, it sounded as though Roger was the bigger, like, it came down to Roger and Rocks is the way that was really framed. But it sounds as though Garp is on that level. Lulameg says, what do you think of the theory that Garp sacrifices himself for Kobe, feeling guilty about Ace? He should have just saved Ace, man. That's the best way to not feel guilty about that anymore. Anthony Ibarra, welcome to the Supernova. Thanks for joining. I think that Garp sacrificing himself for Kobe would be really great. I think it would be really great. I think if Garp died here, that would be phenomenal start for the final saga. I just don't know if that's going to happen, man. Garp could just get captured. Here's the thing. Whoa. Off the cuff theory. All right? Take it and run with it. So, Garp wants to... Shit. Wait, but Garp is Garp a member of Sword? Guys, is Garp a member of Sword? Somebody tell me. Is Garp a member of Sword? And also, let's get the stream likes to 600. Is Garp confirmed to be a member of Sword? Or are we just assuming that? Some people answer. If Garp is not a member of Sword, then what probably happens is Blackbeard captures Garp here. Blackbeard's able to use Garp as the bargaining chip to become, king or whatever, because Garp ultimately is a significantly, like, a million times bigger bargaining chip than Kobe is. You see what I'm getting at? Because this little plot point was just planted of Blackbeard trying to become a king or whatever. Kobe is not sufficient. It's been established Kobe is not sufficient compensation for that status, right? So if that's the case, then is this just how this plotline plays out? Garp gets captured by Blackbeard. Suddenly Blackbeard has a much, infinitely more valuable bargaining chip than Kobe. Celestial Dragons also don't like Garp, though. They never liked Garp, but they probably know how valuable he is. I don't know. He's probably with Sword, though, right? Because it's even emphasized in this chapter, well, the only Marine members that can attack a Yonko without repercussion are Sword members. So it's like, Garp would probably have to be a member of Sword to be able to do this sort of thing. Unless he literally doesn't give a shit. I don't know. Okay. Bassam El-Madawi says, do you think we'll ever get a flashback of Divine Departure versus Galaxy Impact? All Blackbeard Pirates beef with each other. Also current Garp versus Big Mom? ? Love. I'd say we might get a flashback of Garp and Roger clashing. I don't know necessarily with those named attacks because, we got to see a clash between Whitebeard and Roger without them using named attacks or anything like that. I don't think they have to be named attacks for it to be cool. All Blackbeard Pirates have beef with each other. Maybe. Also current Garp versus Big Mom. Dude, current Garp versus Big Mom, it's so hard to say because it's just like, I feel like narratively it should be Big Mom, right? Am I crazy? Narratively, it should be Big Mom. She's built up for so long. She's a Yonko. She's an emperor. I don't know, like Garp is supposed to be past his prime. His strength is way declined and everything. But it's just, look at those ticky-tack punches she was throwing at Law. And look at what Garp just did. It's just, let's wait and see how Garp fares against other opponents, right? If Blackbeard swoops in and takes him out, then I don't know about Garp versus Big Mom, right? Because currently my assumption is that Blackbeard is below Shanks, below Kaido. I put Blackbeard below Big Mom, just the OG Yonko so far, but maybe I'm wrong on that, right? We know too little. It's hard to when Big Mom was so embarrassing for so long, the fact that she technically got taken out by Kid and Law, who I could not imagine Garp losing to. I feel like Garp would do to Kid exactly the same thing that Shanks just did to Kid. I just don't know, man. I feel like we should give it to Big Mom, but it's hard to believe. Sunput Sakesh Revolprati, thanks for being a Yonko tier member for 5 months. Awesome chapter, agreed. Seems all of Blackbeard's crews and Kobe's team's Devil Fruits are revealed now. Yep, kinda bummed that Sword wasn't a secret rogue organization. Yeah, that's the thing. I think it was surprising that Sword was an open secret to a lot of people, but makes sense, I guess. It's a little weird that the Marines are just like cool with. It's just like, imagine it in the real world, like the police just having a rogue dark net, like a rogue member, like a rogue group of members that just go around doing whatever they want, but the government technically isn't responsible for them. Like, in the One Piece world, that's obviously a good thing because we know that they do good guy things. Like, you know, we know Sword members are good guys. But in the real world, if you're a citizen in the real world and you're like, well, there's just a section of the police force that basically just does whatever the fuck they want and the government isn't responsible for them, and they just do whatever the fuck they feel like without restrictions. That's fucking terrifying. And it would basically be the worst thing in the world, right? That would basically be a close to a dystopic society, wouldn't it? OG3 says that's called the police, Morj. Ha 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 ha. That's like the CIA. No, everything that the CIA and the FBI does is government regulated, right? This is just like a publicly accepted rogue police force. People are saying it's literally just the police. That is unfortunately true. It's just, I feel like this is a step. Let's not get into that, but I agree with that sentiment. It's just, I don't know. It's just funny that Sword are clearly the good guys in this story, but the concept of Sword just makes no sense why they would even be allowed to exist. Sun Plus says, Jinbei versus Bizarro, Cat versus Fish, Sea versus Island, in my opinion. Oh, that's an interesting idea. I like that. Sea versus Island. That's cool. That's cool. I like it. I like the idea of Frankie, like, mech fighting a giant island, but maybe Frankie fights San Juan Wolf, the battleship. That's a cool idea, because battleship versus Frankie. I don't know. Frankie makes battleships. I don't know. Remixing says, hi, Morj. Here's the question for today's stream. Chat, feel free to play along. I don't know if we got time for this one. We gotta, I'm gonna open this up, but we got so many things flying at me at the moment. Okay, we're gonna talk about this once the stream slows down a little bit, because you've got another quiz for me and it's complicated. It's about, oh wait, no, it's about the legendary birds. I know about the legendary birds. Okay, we'll get to this shortly. We'll get to this as the stream slows down a little bit. I've got it up in another tab. Hey Yano says, I think Dragon is the strongest character after Im, since he'll probably be the closest character to beat him before Luffy, kind of like Wiper with Eno. Yeah, it's, if you think about it a little bit like, Wiper, like the Wiper Dragon equivalent is most likely the one that's going to be, depending how close Oda plays with the Skypiea parallels, the Wiper Dragon equivalent is probably going to be the closest to what we're seeing already, right? And the other thing is, if you think about the story, like, Shanks is probably going to be the one that's defeated to hype up Blackbeard. In that sense, Dragon is probably the one that will be defeated to hype up Im. It follows that Dragon may be stronger in that sense. And I've always talked about this, which is that Shanks was used in Chapter 1, right? And Dragon was used in Chapter 100. Both kind of playing this sort of protective role for Luffy, right? Shanks saving him from the Sea King, Dragon being the one to save him right before he sets off on his journey. Chapter 1 is the start of the prologue. Chapter 100 is the ending of the prologue, kicking off the main story. There's definitely some parallelism between how Oda's using Shanks and Dragon is being used in an even more secretive way. It's interesting. There's definitely potential for Dragon to be an even bigger deal than Shanks. Mark Ross, thanks for being a Yonko tier member for 6 months. Garp is here to thrash Blackbeard's crew and give them a taste of a real man's Haki. This sounds weirdly sexual. Helps them to grow into the endgame threats they will be. Yeah, I don't think the Blackbeard crew loses here, but yeah, they might get kind of shit on by Garp a little bit. I think we need to see some good feats from Blackbeard's crew, just because the only time we saw them fight was, we've seen them kind of, Hancock turned them to stone pretty easily. Sabo fucked up Burgess. We just haven't seen them be very effective yet in combat. So we need let's see them do some good shit, Let's see them impress us. Guys, let's get the stream likes to 600. We're almost there. Captain Face says, hey, Senior Morgan Man. Oda enjoys Blackbeard Pirates being all spread out on different side quests. Shanks, Royal Past, and Blackbeard Kingly Desire character parallels. I don't know about that, but I do think that it's interesting. I feel like Shanks' crew seems to stick together really neatly, right? They're more like the Straw Hats, so there's the camaraderie there. Whereas Blackbeard Pirates, they function more like the other Yonko crews we've seen function, right? Like Big Mom sending out Tamago, Bobbin, Peckham's, etc. on individual missions. She's got all these characters heading out and about and doing things. Kaido, same thing. First we see, Jack raiding Zoe and things like that. So that's more traditional Yonko actions as far as I can tell. Big Bro Cook, thanks for the 10. I'm a crusader for a new official translation. Not to shame Viz or its translators, but I do think One Piece deserves better than Zolo, Jinbei, etc. I mean, Zolo's at this point, it's something that you can kind of get past. It's not even the Zolo stuff. It's just like they talk like they don't. The translations just don't sound like real English. They don't sound like characters would actually speak. They sound like the dialogue is just so stilted, often extremely corny in certain ways. It's just a terrible, terrible thing to read. And the thing I've always said about Viz translation is this. I understand that the translator for Viz, I think his name is Stephen Paul, right? Right? I think that's it. I might be wrong. Is it? Yeah. So the thing I've always said about this is that he clearly is very good at understanding, like, obviously his Japanese understanding must be the best, but that doesn't mean he's good at writing in English. You get what I'm saying? Like, the mark of being good at translating, it's complicated because it's two steps, right? One, you need to be really able to accurately understand what is being said, and then you need to be able to very, in terms of readability, be able to communicate that same idea down to a T in English in a way that sounds good in terms of, I suppose, script writing, right? Dialogue, right? He's bad at that second part, right? He can probably get down the accuracy of what's being said really well, but he is terrible at making it sound like good dialogue in English. And that's the biggest problem. Lakan Osagi says, Garp showing more love to Kobe than he did to Ace. Wait for Tuesday's video. We all know that the Ace situation was more complicated. With this, it's him getting to fight pirates, which is just what he loves doing in the first place. He gets to fight the most piratey pirate ever, Blackbeard. And by the way, let's not forget this. He gets a little bit of revenge for Ace here in theory as well, at least probably in his mind. Let's see if he references it, because Blackbeard was the one that got Ace in the situation he did. So let's see if that's referenced here. Justin Holland says, I asked this again. Is there anything Vegapunk beneficially could offer the Straw Hats before he likely gets killed, like the location of the next Poneglyph? I hope Vegapunk doesn't give that. I hope that that's part of the Straw Hats' own organic adventures. Because, yeah, I just kind of hope it is. I don't know. I don't know if Vegapunk's getting killed, man. It would be cool if he did, but I have such doubts about that sort of stuff in One Piece at this point. I still believe that Punk Records and the potential destruction of Punk Records is the biggest contribution that Vegapunk could make to the story. So not necessarily to the Straw Hats, but to the story. Thorax says, thanks for the 10. Is Egghead the best arc since the pre-time skip already? Oda needs to relax a bit, control his Conqueror's Haki. It's too strong for the community. It depends, because it's like, I think Egghead is the most chapter to chapter. Do you count the Reverie as an arc? I'm not saying the Reverie is the best, but I'm about to say that Egghead might be the most the arc with the most potential for chapter to chapter weekly exciting things to happen. A lot of it is outside world, like outside of Egghead, so take that as you will. I would still argue that as a story, in my opinion, as a story, Whole Cake Island is the strongest post-time skip One Piece arc by a good margin, just in terms of the dramatic beats that it hit, the way that it constructed its narrative, the twists and turns along the way, the drama that unfolded. I'd say the only weakness of Whole Cake Island, in my opinion, was kind of the way the pacing fell off. Even in the manga, it was just a rough last 15 or so chapters. Honestly, like last 20 or so chapters, and that's probably its biggest weakness, and that's probably what gives it the reputation that it has. But I think overall as a story, it's the strongest and most compelling in my opinion, and most tightly written. Hard Krish W says Garp's officers being all young is really cool. Yeah, because I guess he's the leader for the next gen. McDonald says, first we got York/CP0 attacking the Strats, then Kid attacking Shanks, then Garp attacks a Yonko. You think someone goes for Buggy next? The thing is, Buggy's the one going after other people, right? Crossguild, they're the hunters, not the hunted. So I would love to see them go on the offensive, because so far we're seeing these Yonko crews be attacked. Let's see Crossguild go after someone, you know? Let's see them go after a Marine. Bobby D. Blizzard says, do you think Kid's pitiful performance made Shanks nervous that Luffy isn't strong enough yet since they have the same bounty and shared credit for Wano? I would like to believe that Shanks' faith in Luffy is enough that he wouldn't believe just based on the bounty that that's where it's at. You know, if you're Shanks, you're probably insulted that that this guy's a 3 billion berry bounty, and it's like close to your, like, that's so disrespectful if you're Shanks, right? It's like, the Marines gave this guy a bounty that's just 1 billion less than mine. Right? It's absurd. You know? Ryu says, I remember people used to argue that Garp probably didn't have Conqueror's Haki due to Marine Ford. Did you ever agree, or did you always think he had it? No, I did not think Garp had Conqueror's Haki for the longest time. But once, there was even, this is why Vivre cards are so weird. There was a Vivre card that even came out that said Sengoku had Conqueror's Haki, but Garp doesn't. However, once we hit Wano, the late stage of Wano, and it became clear that only, like, the strongest of the strong have to have advanced Conqueror's Haki, then I was just confused, because it just didn't seem to me like Garp had it. So I was like, maybe Garp's this cool exception where he just has armament Haki, but the armament Haki is so ridiculously strong that it's as good as advanced Conqueror's Haki. But then I'm like, well, then what the fuck's the difference between Conqueror's Haki and armament Haki? Like, why even make a distinction there? They both do the same thing at a certain point. I thought Conqueror's, the whole point is that it's supposed to be the better version of what advanced armament can do. So I kind of just ignored it. I just shelved that. Some One Piece things are kind of just too dicey. It's like, we'll find out when we find out, right? That's kind of how I'm viewing the Shanks Mihawk situation, by the way, right now, right? Because I've mentally shelved it pretty much, where I'm just like, we'll find out when we find out. We'll probably find out in Elbaf when Shanks gets a full fight and we get to see the full extent of everything. Then we can sit back, evaluate, be like, all right, what's the deal between these two? Leo Recto says, how can Whitebeard be above Garp when it was Garp and Roger that took down the captain, though? If anything, Whitebeard was probably fighting someone like Bog or Ray. Because I think it was understood that Whitebeard was really... he's younger than the rest of them, and I don't think he was in his prime or anything at that point. So I imagine at that point, Garp and Roger were probably stronger than Whitebeard, but later on, it's clear that Whitebeard's equal to Roger, you know? Dabilaro Ali says, I wonder what Kuzan did to gain Blackbeard's trust, because Blackbeard is not even suspecting him of being a part of Sword. It's very, very possible, because Blackbeard's a very smart character, that Blackbeard knows that Kuzan is maybe a double agent of some sort or something like that. We don't even know, right, with Kuzan for sure, right? But Blackbeard's very, very smart. He probably is aware of something, and it's just one of those classic, he's going to get the one-up on Kuzan before Kuzan can get the one-up on him. He'll double-cross before Kuzan double-crosses. I think that's going to be a cool scene coming up. I think I'd be personally a little disappointed in Blackbeard if Blackbeard legitimately gets fooled by Aokiji. I just think that Blackbeard's a more cunning character than that. Nerve AMV Maker says Cross Guild was mentioned this chapter and Perona's on the island. What if Mihawk pulls up to claim the bounty? You know, earlier I was just talking about like we had a Cross Guild a buggy question come up, and it was like, hey, you think someone's gonna attack them? In the back of my head, I said I would love to see them attack someone, like a Marine. And in the back of my head, I was like, the biggest Marine around is Garp in terms of reputation. But there's no way he shows up. But you did just say, what if Mihawk pulls up to claim the bounty? And there is the discussion of, you know, Moria is the person that's in trouble here, right? I feel like Moria fits perfectly in line with joining Cross Guild or something like that. Moria's a little weak, but you never know how he's reused in the story. Oh, dude, if they showed up, I can't even. I actually can't even. That's too exciting. Let's stop it. Enough. That's too exciting. We can't even talk about that type of thing. That would be too cool. All right, let's leave it alone. That enters the realm of fan fiction. Let's leave it alone. All right. Mihawk's not showing up. If he does, let's just keep our expectations low. They're not showing up. It's not happening. All right. Axator says Garp did resign after Marineford, so there's a strong chance that he's a member of Sword. Yeah, I mean, I would agree. Zarsama says government wouldn't want Blackbeard to have Garp considering how much he knows. True, God Valley, maybe some history info, etc. Also, Dragon and Mihawk stocks up. Yeah. I'd say especially Dragon, for sure. Just because I think no matter what, I think it is fair to assume that current Dragon is stronger than current Garp, right? So whatever the fuck Garp is doing on this island, you know, I put Dragon above it. Joyboy56 says, is old Garp in your current top 5? No. I don't have him in my current top 5. Here's the thing. If I had no context outside of just seeing this moment, what he just did with his punch, it is just an insane... We've just never seen anything like this, right? Conqueror's Haki is cool because the Haki is so absurd that the effect emanates past your body, past your fist. That's why, you know, they're not even touching. That was Odin's reaction with Whitebeard and Roger clash, right? Because their Haki is so huge that it extends so far beyond their bodies, right? What Garp just did this chapter blows out anything else we've seen visually in terms of Conqueror's Haki, right? Like, look at what Big Mom did to Page 1 or something like that. That's the type of stuff we've seen with Conqueror's Haki before. What Garp just did this chapter is it's just unheard of, right? It's stupid, right? Like last chapter when Shanks did Divine Departure, everyone was freaking out because it just seemed like such a large release of Haki on such a wide scale. What Garp just did this chapter, it makes no sense, right? This is something that it just seems like an unbelievable panel. However, so basically what I'm saying is like, if this was Garp in his prime being shown or something like that, I think I would immediately look at this feat and be like, yeah, he's clearly stronger than everyone else today. However, we have to take into account what we've been told so far, right? Which is that what we've been told is that Garp is well past his prime, that, you know, he's well past his prime. He's not really talked about as being, you know, the strongest character in the world anymore, like certain other people are. It didn't feel during Marineford as though he's stronger than Shanks or Whitebeard and stuff like that necessarily. Maybe he was still close to that level or something, but and we also have to take into account that he's probably going to lose fairly soon, right? So with all of those things taken into account, I'm going to just temper what I'm seeing here, even if visually and just in terms of spectacle, it's the craziest, one of maybe if not the craziest depiction of Haki we've seen in the story. We just have to take into account that it's just like what's actually going to happen when he fights somebody. It's probably going to go down differently. So I'm not going to put him in the top 5 just yet. But a lot of that is just because of what we can assume is going to happen or is supposed to happen. That's why. And what we've kind of been told about where his strength's at right now. If I were to make my like pure gut instinct like call, I'd be like, this is fucking crazy. Luffy's out here, he can't even do a single Conqueror's Haki punch against a Seraphim, which is still blowing my mind. It's like, Dude, if Garp showed up and did that Galaxy Punch on a Seraphim, you're telling me that Seraphim would not be knocked out on the floor right now? I think it would be. Luffy's out here just doing basic-ass jet gatling on it, and I'm just like... I'm having a hard time not ranking Garp above you, even though I know that Luffy right now should be stronger than Garp, right? I know it, but I'm just like... Whatever Oda's doing at the moment to stretch out that stuff and to overhype Garp, it's fucking with my perceptions, you know? Reflexy, thanks for being a Yonko tier member for 2 months. Talk about Kobe is future of the Marines. I have a theory/analysis I've been trying to tell you for months. You gotta check out. Where do I send it? Maybe just link on Twitter and just say your Reflexy. Just link it on Twitter and send it. But I cannot guarantee that I will read it. I will take a peek. I will skim it. But if it's really, I don't know. It will depend on how interesting it is because people send me and at me shit all the time. But still link it. John Ross says, I want to see Garp grab Shiryu mid-sneak attack. I just think Shiryu needs some hype at this point, right? Like, it would be cool, but we need the Blackbeard Pirates to look impressive for a moment, right? Christian Brazza says, I like the Devil Fruits and the updated designs for the Blackbeard Pirates. What do you think the matchup for the Straws and the Blackbeard Pirates will be? I mean, off the top of my head, it's just hard. Off the top of my head, I'm like, Zoro Shiryu, Usopp, Van Augur. I feel like Nami, Laffy, Chopper, Q, Robin, Katarina, Devon. Those are the ones that definitely make sense in my head. I used to think Sanji, Burgess. Now I'm like, maybe Jinbei, Burgess. I just feel like Sanji's opponent needs to be a bit stronger than what we've been seeing so far. I feel like Avalo Pizarro versus Frankie, Mech versus Giant Island would be cool. But we could also get that with San Juan Wolf, the Battleship versus Frankie, because it's two, giant things. I feel like Brook versus Vasco Shot could be good simply because Brook has ice abilities. Vasco Shot seems to rely on fire. Those are the things I've got for the moment. But I think we could be surprised with a lot of the matchups. Keenan, thanks. What do you think Vasco Shot's Devil Fruit does? Is it a Logia? If it's a Paramecia, I have absolutely no idea. I feel like it's a Paramecia. I feel like it's similar to the Mochi Fruit, right? And I imagine he fights a lot with fire. That's what I'm guessing at the moment. Musi Lin says, Garp will surprise even more. Thanks for the 10. I'm of the belief that Garp is still close to his prime strength, but lacks his prime stamina. Strength is the last thing to go, after all. He'll solo Blackbeard crew, but tire out. He did mention, I think, all the way back in Enies Lobby, that even his power, his physical power, is declining when he was throwing cannonballs and stuff. So I wouldn't be surprised if he's also declined decently in terms of strength. But yeah, maybe he'll put up a really good showing, but we'll just tire out. Kind of like Whitebeard still put out insane feats, but he just didn't have the health to really keep it up, you know? Jacob Patino, thanks. Mentioning Asa made me think about people talking about female cast in Shonen recently. Undead Unluck female cast peak in my opinion. Please catch up if you aren't. I think Undead Unluck has a good female cast, particularly its main character. I'm not fully caught up. I think I'm about halfway or something from the current amount of chapters. I definitely don't think it compares to Asa at all because, again, I put Undead Unluck. There's just a certain... Hey, maybe that's a video for Manga Morj. There's a certain style of writing, I think we could say even specifically for female characters, which still falls into a lot of the generic shonen ideas, right? And honestly, this extends even to seinen in it, manga, at least that I've seen. I definitely think that the way that Asa's written is a good number of steps above what you typically see in terms of how shonen characters are written in general. Fizzle says, what happened to Law, Mr. Mark? I mean, he lost, right? Probably, hopefully. JP, thanks for the 20. This chapter underscores your latest video, yeah? Garp, who is someone close to, if not at Pirate King's level, rising to the occasion to protect those precious to him with Conqueror's Haki. Another glimpse of what Luffy can do. Maybe. I'm saying more so that we get a really cool trigger out of it, whereas I don't think that this is a trigger for Garp necessarily, but... yeah, I definitely think that there's certain types of characters that are just stronger when they're fighting for someone that they care about. Surreal Soviet, thanks for the 5. Can't confirm because I don't know Japanese, but people were discussing that Hibari and Akainu have the same accent/dialect, possibly hinting at some relation. That is interesting. That is definitely interesting. Guys, let's get the stream likes to 700. Doogman11, thanks for the 16. If Garp is captured, then Luffy could face Blackbeard in a Davy backfight on Pirate Island, where it originated for Garp. I just don't see Luffy doing a Davy backfight with Blackbeard because it's just so personal and there's so much hatred involved there, you know? It would be like the same way I wouldn't imagine Luffy doing a Davy backfight with Kaido, but just scaled up 10 because Luffy would hate Blackbeard way more than he hates Kaido, you know? Skylar H says, it was cool seeing the Marines organize teamwork. Yeah, you know, the Marines are often made to look like a bunch of random fodder bums that just get fucked up and have no real sense of, you know, strategy. But this was like a squad of elite officers pulling up. And, you know, Garp being the finisher was really, really cool to see. Law Shambled says, hey Morj, unless Law got off screen, isn't Blackbeard still out fighting him right now? Maybe. If that's the case, then I unfortunately have to give Law more respect. How crazy would it be if, like, Kid got defeated in one panel and Law's still been fighting Blackbeard for, like, the last 20 chapters? If so, who could stop Garp from rampaging? This could be Kuzan's moment. I really want to see a Garp Kuzan confrontation for the character stuff, if nothing else. I'm also interested to see, in my opinion, I know Aokiji is supposed to be very, very strong, obviously. Obviously, he's supposed to be very, very strong. But Aokiji's abilities, right? Ice, I'm very curious to see how those match up with top tier Haki users, because do you guys get what I'm saying? It's just like, what would he really do against a... I'm not saying Garp is stronger than... Like, current Garp is stronger than Aokiji. Obviously, Prime Garp was. I'm not saying current Garp is stronger than Aokiji. Garp, at the moment, I'm leaving undetermined. He's very fluid in terms of where he could fall, I suppose. It's just... we'll have to see who he fights, right? I'm just curious, what would Aokiji really do against something like the Galaxy Punch, right? Like, Ice is a really strong ability against most characters, but I'm just saying the tippy top stuff, it's just like you can't freeze a giant Haki blast, you know? And it's like, Ice isn't really an offensive force attack that you can use similar to, you know, Akainu's magma fists or meteors or, you know, Kaido's giant dragon form. Ice is kind of just like you freeze it or you don't, at least as far as we've seen. So yeah, I'm curious how we would see Aokiji fight against some of these guys, you know? Caleb Brown says, is Kuzan lying to Blackbeard about sword to save Kobe? Why would Aokiji really care about Kobe, though? They have no dynamic, right? Bassam El Madawi says, to answer someone's question, sea stone handcuffs are supposed to be indestructible. That's why they could shackle Jinbei and impel down. I don't know whose question that was, but thank you for answering it. Name says, if Blackbeard does end up with 3 fruits, do you think there's a chance that the rest of his upper crew can get 2? I think that, for example, certain characters could maybe. So I think maybe Shiryu could get 2. Reason being, Shiryu has eaten one himself. He could make his sword, his weapon, eat one, right? I've always thought it's interesting that weapons can eat devil fruits. I assume that would be to give the opportunity to have, you know, a strong weapon devil fruit user in the future, right? So sure, you could have 2 abilities, right? Invisibility and a sword ability or something. For the others, I don't know. My assumption is that there's something special about Blackbeard's body specifically, as implied by Marco, that would allow him to do this and not other characters. Fierin Ma Lazor says, I get why people dog on Garp for the ace thing, but he also did threaten to kill Akainu, and retroactively with this feat, considering he didn't fight, he basically was a neutral party. Yeah, thanks for the 10. I think it's just a more complicated scenario than that. That is partly what my video on Tuesday is about. It's just a complicated scenario. You could argue that, in my opinion, Garp, he chose to stay neutral in some ways in that he allowed Luffy to save Ace, right? At the end of the day, if you really think about it, Garp positioned himself as the last line of defense to saving Ace, and he chose to drop that. He chose to not be that last line of defense when it really came down to it. That is as close as you can get to saving Ace as you could ask for. Because after that moment, Ace was in fact saved, right? Garp was the last line of defense. Sengoku brought the hammer down right afterwards, yes, but Sengoku was a bit little too late, right? Because they'd already opened up Ace's keys and everything. So Garp was the final obstacle for Luffy, and Garp chose to remove himself as an obstacle. After Garp chose to remove himself from an obstacle, Ace was freed. That's something to think about, right? That's something fairly significant to think about. It's not Garp's fault that Ace then fucked himself over and got himself killed, and we saw how Garp reacted after that. It's not as cut and dry, I suppose. And I think we don't know enough about Garp and his beliefs, his motivations, etc., and why he stands so resolutely with the Marines to fully judge his actions just yet. That's my take on it. And I'll elaborate more again in Tuesday's video. But that's the off-the-cuff take. Kakashi Snitch 9, thanks for the 10. Morj, please tell me you didn't catch up. You didn't switch up like the rest. He still loses to Akainu. I think there's a solid chance that Garp at Marine Ford could have beaten Akainu. I think that there's a very strong chance. I think that Akainu right now, whose position as an endgame villain, could likely be stronger than Garp. Because maybe Akainu picked up Advanced Conqueror's Haki or something post time skip. Maybe from his battle with Aokiji. Maybe Akainu is stronger now. I think Akainu now should just be the strongest Marine out there. But I think that it's perfectly realistic to believe that old Garp could have beaten Akainu. Because at the end of the day, old Garp is hyped in the same, Garp is placed in that same realm as Roger and Whitebeard, right? He's placed in that same realm as Roger and Whitebeard. We saw what an enraged Whitebeard did to Akainu. Garp could probably do the same thing, and the difference is Garp is probably not suffering from heart attacks and such. Difference being, Garp doesn't have Whitebeard's Devil Fruit. How does Garp's Haki stack against Whitebeard's Haki? There's a lot of question marks there. The one thing that I will say is that we know that Garp's punch is more lethal than Akainu's punch, because we can see the comparison between Garp versus Marco and Akainu versus Marco. Akainu could not damage Marco. Obviously, Akainu would beat Marco overall, but Akainu couldn't damage Marco. Garp could damage Marco. Right? He's the only character that we've seen throughout One Piece actually damage Marco. And we've seen Marco against, without Kairoseki involved, we've seen Marco against Kizaru, against Akainu, against Big Mom, against Kaido. Garp is the only one that's, we have seen land a hit on him. Right? That's something very significant to consider, and that's old Garp, right? And that was Garp clearly not using anywhere near the full force of his Haki, as we just saw with the Galaxy Punch, right? So, do I think Garp back then could have killed Akainu? Or could have killed Akainu? No. I don't think that for certain. But I think it's more of a debate now than I did before. And I would also add that I think it's more of a toss-up now than it was before. And I would also add that I think Akainu would at least be fairly worried about Garp coming for him, right? I think the same feeling of shitting himself that he had when Whitebeard came up and stood behind him, I think that's the same feeling he would have when Garp rolls up on him. That's what I'll say. I am still fairly certain that right now, whatever changed, maybe Garp got a little weaker in the last 2 years, or maybe Akainu got stronger in the last 2 years. Akainu should be clearly stronger than Garp is right now, in my opinion, right? It's just rolling the story where we're at in the story, where characters should be at in the end game, right? Where a final villain, head of the Marines, like Akainu should be at. Prime Garp versus Akainu, it's no question. It's a joke. Let's not even put Akainu in that category. And you guys may not know this, but I'm a big Akainu fan. Akainu is one of my favorite villains across the entire story. He's my favorite of the Admirals by a good margin. Also, random thought on Big Mom now that I'm because this came up earlier in the stream. Big Mom versus old Garp. Again, Big Mom should be stronger, but isn't it crazy that Big Mom, she left Marco behind because she confronted Marco, she even grabbed Marco. Marco overpowers Prometheus, then Big Mom's able to grab Marco, then she tells Perispera to finish Marco off or something like that. I forget exactly. what it was. But Big Mom ultimately leaves Marco behind because she's like, I don't have the souls to deal with you right now. Garp wouldn't have needed souls or bullshit. Like, we saw, Garp could just beat Marco down with Haki, and he would not have had a problem, right? He held back with that punch. If he really wanted to go all out on Marco, Marco would be a smear on the wall, right? So it's just interesting to me. Obviously, Big Mom is significantly stronger than Marco, but she still respected his defenses enough that she's like, okay, I can't really do anything to you right now. I'm going to exit this fight. Garp would have just wiped the floor with him. It's just the way matchups go, I suppose, but that's interesting to think about if you really want to debate Big Mom versus Garp. Because Big Mom's Haki is looking like the worst out of a lot of these top-tier characters at this point. Where to Man says, you're saying Crossguild showing up would be too hype, but this is the final saga. If not now, then when? It's just too, like, I'm not saying it's too hype in that it can't happen. I'm saying it's too hype in that, like, you know, if we start going down this train, then we're just like, we just start, I don't know. Let's just pleasantly be surprised. Yes, it could happen, but let's just pleasantly be surprised if/when it happens, right? Let's not go down this crazy train of, like, you know, well, then this character needs to show up next chapter, and then this, and then what if Im shows up to make the trade for Kobe or some shit? I don't know. Stormfox says, you know Shanks left Elbaf, right? Hopefully he comes back. Bassem Elmadawi says, Oda levels people up to match their titles. Blackbeard became Yonko level while Marco after fighting Admirals. Whitebeard level up as a Yonko. What does that mean? I literally don't get it. Became Yonko level while Marco after fighting... I don't even know what to say. What does this mean? Blackbeard became Yonko level while Marco after fighting Admirals. Whitebeard leveled up as a Yonko. I'm sorry, I literally can't understand this statement. Whitebeard leveled up as a Yonko. Like, I literally don't get this statement. I'm sorry. Rayuchi says, it looks like Garp Udamo Biju bombed Rasengan the island. Yeah, it really does look like that, right? Sampath Sakesh Revolpati says, it was a common understanding that most Marines can't have Conqueror's Haki since they work under the government, have no independent will. Is sword a counter to it? I mean, I think that was just a big assumption of Haki for a while, but to be fair, it's an assumption that I made as well. Because Conqueror's Haki is ultimately, it's the disposition to stand above others, right? You intuitively wouldn't really have that as a Marine, because that's just not who you are trying to be. And the characters that choose to work for somebody else, like a Zoro or like a Rayleigh, it's always considered a huge deal. And you have many, many quotes throughout the series talking about Zoro like this. Like, you know, even Whitebeard telling Odin, like, you don't seem like someone who would work for somebody else. Characters talk about this like Odin, like Zoro all the time. Like, certain characters just, with that sort of disposition, it wouldn't make sense for them to work for somebody else, which is why, if that's being talked up so much as an aspect of Conqueror's Haki, it wouldn't make sense for Marines to have it, right? Because they're all choosing to be part of rank and file. But then you look at certain characters like Garp, right? And Garp could make sense having it simply because he's choosing to join the side that is built to fight bad guys throughout the world, and that's what he wants to do. It seems as though Garp never ceded any sort of will or authority to anybody else during his tenure as a Marine, right? He always refused to work for the Celestial Dragons, refused promotion and stuff like that. He always seemed like a free spirit who kind of recklessly did his own thing. So in that sense, it makes sense. Sengoku, a little bit more questionable, because Sengoku really does seem like a fucking pencil-pushing nerd who just does what he's told. Like, seriously, you look at his past quotes and stuff like that, and how he talks to Saul in flashbacks, and how he just generally talks in like throughout the story. Just, he seems like the opposite of every character we've ever seen with Conqueror's Haki. He doesn't think for himself. He places orders above himself. It's just weird. Sengoku feels like he has Conqueror's Haki just because he's supposed to have it. Just because he doesn't fit the mold at all, but, you know, we're told he has it, right? Garp actually does fit the mold, so because he's such an outlier in the Marines, I suppose it makes sense. Sword members, I could see maybe being the same thing, right? Interestingly, I think Akainu makes sense as having Conqueror's Haki because, like, potentially developing it, because Akainu has a very, very strong and very stubborn will, and ultimately he is following his own sense of justice more than anything, and he follows orders, right? But he's continually pushing towards the top, and he wants to be the top of the Marines. And when it comes down to it, if he disagrees with the ideas of his superiors and everything like that, like with the Gorosei, he will challenge that, right? He will challenge that, and it seems like he wants to take the Marines in his direction. And we even see all the way back when he was just a vice admiral at Ohara, he will kill a boat of innocent civilians, even when it sounds like he wasn't supposed to, just because he's gonna follow what he thinks is correct at the end of the day. So Akainu, I think, makes sense as potentially getting Conqueror's Haki. So I think we may have been wrong in some of us, including myself, may have been wrong in our initial assumptions about Marines and what type of Haki they can have. Bassem El-Madawi says, while Marco didn't. Sorry for the multiple chat. Oh, okay. Let's work it backwards here. So Bassem El-Madawi says, Oda levels people up to match their titles. Blackbeard became Yonko level while Marco didn't after fighting admirals. Whitebeard, while Marco didn't after fighting admiral level. After fighting admirals. Yonko level is like, being a Yonko doesn't mean you're Yonko level, like the same level as Shanks or something like that, just by having the title. Like, Buggy is not Shanks' level just by virtue of having the title. Marco didn't after fighting admirals because Marco wasn't stronger than admirals. Whitebeard leveled up as a Yonko. I don't think Whitebeard leveled up over the course of Marine Ford. I'm still not fully understanding, but I kind of get it, at least the first part. Nando B, thanks for the 5. What's your opinion on the Revs? I'm a huge fan of Dragon/Saba and the idea of the Revolutionary Army in general. I love the idea of a non-pirate force opposing the world government. Ultimately, the Revolutionary Army might turn out to be the strongest and stronger than any Yonko crew, just because they're going to be the last force of that nature that's really going up against the world government and IM and everything like that. They might be the strongest in that sense, but at the same time, like, generally to establish the threat of the final villain, you have them take down the other strongest group before the heroes can come in and save the day, right? So the Revolutionaries being that group could be cool. I think that's probably why Sabo probably got a strength boost in the time that we didn't see him. But these Revolutionary Army figures, they really do look very underwhelming so far. So let's hope that we haven't seen everything they have up their sleeve. Captain Face, thanks for the 20. Hey Nam Drum. Interesting. You see the alternative idea to your theory of Vegapunk records that Kuma's flashback is what's shown from PRs to the world, and evil of celestial dragons and world government will be known as Kuma's last laugh while he's killed at Holy Land. Ooh, yeah, so I saw that theory start popping up and like people mentioning it in the comments even of that Punk Records video. I really, really like that theory. I think that would be very, very poetic. I think that would be potentially even... I think that would be... It's like, what's Punk Records for then in that case? But it almost doesn't matter because I think story-wise it would be more dramatic, more powerful if it's... The tragedy of Kuma leads to the liberation of the world in a sense. I'd be happy with either route, I suppose. I'd be happy with either route. Maybe they combine in some way and they're both used or something like that. But the Kuma route, I really like that as a poetic end for his character. Eric Trelato says, penis, thanks. JWP says, what's good, Morji just streaming, man. Nothing more to say there. Okay, guys, let's get the stream likes to 700. Mr. MMF2 says, we saw a glimpse of Shanks' power, Roger's protege, and now we see a hint of Garp's power. Rock stalks through the roof. Dude, the Rocks flashback, which we realistically could get soon, considering, you know, we got Garp in the picture, and Garp knows about God Valley and everything like that. This is the base, by the way. We're at the base of the Rocks Pirates, right? Hachinosu used to belong to them. So there's a lot of potential here. Narrator says, Kobe will kill the Pirate King to become hero of Prologue Marines, essentially faking Luffy's death, a form of freedom. KKL, Kobe kills Luffy, believe. That's an interesting idea. But I don't think Luffy... The thing is that Luffy, to me, he's just a character that never cares about, like, his notoriety, he almost prefers it. I don't think that that's something that will ever stop or hold back Luffy's freedom. Luffy's concept of freedom is, I can do whatever the fuck I want, and nobody can really hold him back. So I don't think that's necessary. Kalal Brown says, hey Morj, from what we've seen so far, the Blackbeard Pirates look outmatched. I doubt any of them can fight Garp blow for blow, and he has backup. Yeah, but I don't know if any of these are, like, I don't know if these are the final squad of Blackbeard Pirates that are going to be fighting against Garp, right? At the moment, to me, I'm just going to say, I feel like you could line up every one of the Blackbeard commanders that's on the island, and Garp would beat all of them. Maybe I'm underrating Shiryu severely, but that's just what it's looking like to me instinctively. So I get the sense that either Blackbeard shows back up or Aokiji shows back up. Both could be interesting scenarios. Maybe both happen. Be nice to see. I Can Drive, congratulations, says, do you think Blackbeard going to use Moria's fruit, like bringing back dead characters like Ace and Whitebeard to screw with Luffy? So they're buried in certain graves at the moment. I kind of don't care for it just because it's just like a really tired idea. Black Clover spoilers for like 1 minute. For like 30 seconds. 30 seconds. 30 seconds Black Clover spoilers. This is just something I don't care for. It just feels so played out. You've seen, how many fucking times have you seen it where it's just like, oh, and I'll bring back your loved ones from the dead, and then you have to face them and kind of deal with the emotional trauma of it and everything like that. Black Clover spoilers over. If you know, you know, right? I even like that series overall. It's just same thing I felt during the Naruto stuff. It's just, it's like, it's so played out as a concept. I don't personally feel anything anytime those scenarios happen. It's just like, it feels cheap almost in terms of like the author stretching to try and think of something that theoretically should be really traumatic for the character, but it's just such a fake fiction-y scenario that it's just like, it's just really eye-rolling for me to read, if that makes it, like, I don't know. It's like you're supposed to really sympathize with the character who's seeing their dead person's image, like their dead loved one's imitation, I guess, being taunted, used to taunt them right in front of their eyes. It's just something that's so hard to relate to in real life. Like, I can relate to the idea of like, oh my god, what if my mom died? And that would be really, really tragic. And then it's like, okay, and now what if she was brought back as a zombie and then put in front of you? Wouldn't that be really, really fucking traumatic? It's like, yeah, I guess in like a weird, sure. It's just like 2 steps down the line in terms of like, of trying to reach for a character conflict or an emotional conflict for a character or something, but it's just such a, it's such a cliche, and it's just such a fake scenario. It's just such a fake, like, unrelatable scenario to anything you can really imagine in real life, that it's kind of just like, okay, we get we're supposed to feel, emotionally empathetic for the character who's being forced to experience this in front of their eyes, but it's just not a very relatable scenario, in my opinion. It's just really weird and fake. It's just forced, Chow Jr. says, Morj, I just watched the Mario movie, and it has indeed more tension than the Wano arc. Well, look, I'm going to let you guys in on something. You can watch pretty much any single Disney movie you can think. Like, you can watch any Disney movie you can think of. It'll have more tension than the Wano arc. You can watch most animated children's films that will have more tension than the Wano arc. That is not an exaggeration, because the reality is that most, even children's animated films, I can point to a clear midpoint through those movies where the main character, the hero, experiences some sort of level of failure, frustration, defeat, self-doubt, not knowing if they have what it takes to succeed, etc. That's what tension is. If Luffy and the Straw Hats and the majority of the Alliance literally never felt that for the entirety of the Wano arc, then it factually has less tension than, I don't know, fucking pull whatever you want out of a hat. Frozen, Wreck-It Ralph. What do you want? Like, what are the most recent Disney movies? Like, literally anything. It just wasn't written in that manner. Sean Easton says, Morj on the stream. Morj on the stream and Power Vision in the chat. 10 out of 10. Oh, is Power Vision in chat? Let's get those likes up, y'all. Yeah, let's get the likes up. Sorry, I'm just looking at the super stab at the moment. Connor Ferret says Fox and the Hound. Okay, low-key, Fox and the Hound is the darkest children's movie I can think of off the top. Not because you can think of movies like, oh, well, this movie had like it ended with a really tragic death or something like that. Fox and the Hound is so dark that I can't even, how do I say this? I can't even, it's a really, really phenomenal film, but I, as an adult, don't want to go back and watch it because the messaging of the story is too sad. Because again, it's not about just, lots of movies have a character die, lots of animated movies have a character die or something, and that's really sad. Ends with a tragic death or something like that. Animated movies do that. Fox and the Hound is just so sad. It's just heartbreaking because the idea is that by the end of it, the full story is basically just seeing two friends, right? Two childhood friends, completely innocent, not having any prejudices or anything against each other. Two childhood friends. Like, I'm going to tear up actually just talking about the Fox and the Hound. It's so sad. Two childhood friends just raised in certain circumstances and environments where they ultimately end up at each other's throats because just the metaphor being, I suppose, society, etc., or whatever, treats them as two different, like, that they have to be on different sides, right? And it works. Like, it's not a story about them essentially at the end of the day reconciling those differences and coming back together and being like, screw what society says or anything like that, we can still be friends. It's not that. The story is just, it's the harsh truth. Like, at the end of the story, they're literally trying to kill each other. Think about that. Think about how fucking sad that is for... I'm actually gonna cry thinking about it's so sad. Literally by the end of the movie, the final section is them trying to kill each other. It's this third party, the giant bear and everything that comes in, that throws everything off. Todd, the fox, literally has to... He saves... Copper, the dogs. He saves Copper, the dog, and Copper's owner. The owner is still going to kill the fox, Todd, because he still has that prejudice in his head. The only thing we really get is that, like, Fox and the Hound, Todd and Copper, they're not friends again by the end of the movie. They're still essentially forced to be mortal enemies, never see each other again. The most that they can get to is, like, okay, I won't let my people kill you. Right? That's the most that they get to. And it takes such specific, extreme circumstances for them to just reach that level of understanding. And it's so fucking sad because that's one of those movies that's just... It's like, you can say that it's a bad message for a kid's movie, but it's a very real message for a kid's movie. It's a very real message for a kid's movie because it's just... That's the truth of some people's circumstances and the way that, if you fall into some categories or some cultures or some whatevers... That's how you will end up growing up. It is a really, really dark movie. It is a very, very sad movie. I think it's sadder than any other animated movie I have ever seen, I think. Including adult animated movies. It is really sad. I'm actually really sad. Okay. It's so sad. I'm actually teary-eyed thinking about it. Because here's the thing. I have animated movies that I put on, like, a really high pedestal. I'm like, man, The Lion King, so dramatic. What it forces, the experiences it forces Simba through, etc., the tragedy experiences, etc. But it all comes to a certain positive conclusion. The Fox and the Hound, just like, I put it on a really high pedestal, but I can never go back and watch that movie. That's how sad it fucking is. All right, we're gonna leave that alone. Enough talking about Fox and the Hound. G4162 says, being real, thanks for the 10. Being real, Garp is probably stronger than every member of the BB crew individually. I would agree. Maybe we're underrating Shiryu. It'll come down to them ganging him. Could his crew take him alone, or would Blackbeard need to join too? I would just like to see Blackbeard join in too. I would like to see Blackbeard join in too. Narrator said, could this crew take him alone? My call is Blackbeard with his squad at the very least backing him up. I'd say no, but maybe we're underestimating Shiryu, as I've been saying. Narrator says, Kuzan would know Kobe and his relation to Garp from Water 7. He still may not care, assuming his plans are more important than Kobe is a safe bet. Yeah, that's where I'm kind of standing. Nino Smith says, Morj, do you think if Pell turns out to be a spy for the government on the Nefertari family, and he is actually very strong, would it improve Alabasta? He should not be strong, because it's just like, he lost to Robin. There's no reason to throw to pre-time skip Robin when the entire fate of the country is on the line, you know? He shouldn't be strong. JP, thanks for the 10. I always thought Garp staying a Marine was due to rocks. A pirate crew so dangerous, he and Roger ended up protecting Tenryubido on God Valley, convinces him chaotic evil of piracy is worse than the world government. I think that that's a good argument. I definitely think that that's a good argument. Where are we at? JWP says, Big Mom relied heavily on fruit instead of Haki. She relied on neg diffing anyone who wasn't a top tier with soul focus and just fear diffing. See, even that explanation doesn't hold up great though, because she's at least portrayed on that same level in terms of Haki, because what's the first thing that Shanks and Whitebeard do? They split the sky. What's the first thing that Kaido and Big Mom do? They split the sky. What's the same thing that when we feel like Luffy has hit that tier, what does he do? He splits the sky with Kaido, right? That's the tier of, advanced Conqueror's Haki of the highest order, right? It's not even just advanced Conqueror's Haki, right? It's a high level of advanced Conqueror's Haki, if that makes sense. Because if you recall, Yamato, when she unlocked advanced Conqueror's Haki, she didn't split the sky with Kaido, right? So it's not just having it, right? Even Luffy, when Luffy first got advanced Conqueror's Haki in 10:10, he wasn't splitting the sky with Kaido, right? That was when he was still getting the hang of it. It was when he came back the next time around, he came back, and this time, he's even more ready to go, he's even stronger, then he splits the sky with Kaido, right? So it's not even just having advanced Conqueror's Haki puts you at that level. Like, if you're splitting the sky, then you're good. Your Conqueror's Haki is strong, right? Your advanced Conqueror's Haki is strong. So Big Mom is definitely put on that level, right? She should be there. And then let's not forget, she and Kaido fought for days or something like that, and it seemed as though it was just physical combat. It seemed as though just in straight physical combat she was keeping up with Kaido, and it was portrayed to be even, right? So the idea that it's just her fruits that are strong, I think people are even forgetting in Wano. Like, there's so many aspects to it. Her invulnerability that was played up so much, that was heavily implied to be because she's just such a Haki monster, right? The only time she was vulnerable was when her will was weak, when the Mother Carmel photo was broken, right? So she's been portrayed as that same physical freak as Kaido for the longest time. Even when she first started just breaking out the Elbaf cannons on Whole Cake Island, I remember readers were freaking out at the level of power she was displaying. The Straw Hats were freaking out. If you look at the Straw Hats reactions, everyone from Luffy through Jinbei at Big Mom doing her first Elbaf cannon when she's chasing them right out of Whole Cake Island, everybody's freaking the fuck out. They're just way out of their depth, right? So it's just bizarre to get to the Wano fight with her versus Law and Kid, and you just see no evidence of a strong Haki user. It's just like she's the only one that's conveniently written as bad at Haki at random moments, when consistently throughout the story she's portrayed as being on the same tier as these other guys in terms of Haki. GDN says Sengoku literally said, "Are you doubting the world government? Be quiet and obey orders to Saul. The only top marine I don't see having it is Kizaru." Yeah, that's the weird thing. Like Sengoku, it just doesn't make sense for him to be a Conqueror's Haki user. GDN says Fujitora literally walked into a room with 20 kings at the Reverie and got them to do his bidding. Green Bull disobeyed his orders and went rogue in Wano. I don't think that disobeying orders is the only aspect of having Conqueror's Haki, because there's plenty of characters you can think of that disobey orders that wouldn't necessarily have it. It's more so just, it's the other way around, where it's like, it feels like if you're very, very obedient and don't have a will of your own, then that disqualifies you probably from having Conqueror's Haki, in my opinion. At least that's what it feels like we've been seeing. Dondani says, last chapter I was hoping for Garp getting off screen for story impact to hype up the Blackbeard Pirates, and now that happening would leave an even bigger impact. I agree. Like, seeing Garp get hyped up, it gives him his due, his hype, etc. Does him his service as a character, and then it's more exciting to see him lose. Dark Angel says, Sword explained by Aokiji makes no sense. I think it's just a cover story. Undercover agents are a different thing, but Kobe is being known as a hero by all. Yeah, we need to know more about Aokiji's motivations to really make a call on that one. Sean Easton says, if someone brought back my sister from the dead for a traumatic fight, I would kick her ass. Also, she's not dead at the moment. Okay, I was about to say that's a really... I was about to be like, that is a very sad thing to drop on me right here. Every sibling's dream. Luz Vasquez says, first Hokage and Madara. I mean, that's my... I think bringing back the first Hokage and Madara is cool for just cool story hype purposes, you know? We get to see Madara fight. We get to see the first Hokage fight in the story. But I'm saying the emotional shit of just... I'm so happy that Naruto did not bring back... They didn't bring... Kishimoto had the good sense... The good sense to not bring back Jiraiya. At least he understood that as stupid as bringing all of these characters back for really forced moments, he didn't bring back Jiraiya. I'm very happy about that. Because it's just like, oh my god. Just, yeah. Like, I'm fine. I don't know. It depends. Edward Montoya says, like, if we're talking about Ace being brought back just to fuck with Luffy mentally or emotionally or whatever, I'm just like, let's get this chapter over with, you know? Edward Montoya says, with will being something that is passed down, you think that having Conqueror's Haki is also something that can be inherited? If so, should Dragon? I think it's more so just like your makeup as a person, right? Because Conqueror's Haki is something that you're born with. So if you're coming from a long line of people that are just built different, right? Then you have a high likelihood of having Conqueror's Haki. That's it. So I don't think it's necessarily the will literally genetically being passed down. It's more so just the it's in your DNA to be someone with a really strong will, you know, or have the potential to be that. Rage She says, can we talk about Kujaku and her fruit? I'm not gonna lie, I don't remember which one that was. Which one's Kujaku? Let's take a look. Kujaku is which one's Kujaku? She the flower one? I keep seeing Pizarro and misreading it as Pinzoro. Not gonna get it out of my head. Where are we at? Oh, the Whip one. I got him mixed up. Somebody mentioned that that Hibari speaks like Akainu. I think that's interesting just because her ability is flowers, right? And Akainu has flowers on his, shirt and stuff like that. It's interesting. I'm not gonna think too much about these subordinate figures just because I don't know how significant they're gonna be in the long run. I'm kind of like, at the moment, I'm like, are these Oni Wabanshu just all over again? Let's wait and see what happens with them, before talking about them some more, in my opinion. Virgil Hawkins says, what are your thoughts on Sanji and Pudding's dynamic throughout Whole Cake? Plus, what's your current ordered top 5 strongest? What's your top 3 favorite Chainsaw Man characters? I thought Sanji and Pudding's dynamic was actually... I liked it in Whole Cake Island, honestly. I think that some parts of it could have been... I definitely think that some parts of it could have been developed a little bit better. I don't want to get into too much detail regarding what that is, but I do think that with us understanding a bit more, or maybe having gotten some hints a bit more about Pudding's insecurities with her third eye, because I think in the moment when we kind of find out the third eye stuff is something that really bothered her, and then therefore Sanji finding it beautiful is something that really emotionally affects her, I think it would really have helped if we had had some hint whatsoever as to that being a part of her personality, just because it's a little abrupt. It would be kind of like, if Luffy says to Kaido, like, man, your dragon scales are really cool. Like, if he said that, like, as part of his fight, and then Kaido suddenly broke down crying and was like, all my life, people have, like, we just get these flashbacks of people bullying Kaido for years because he has dragon scales, therefore he looks weird or some shit like that, Not quite the same thing, but you get what I'm, like, I feel like generally, if you want to have that moment where a character does something that makes the other character have this sort of sudden realization that, oh my god, like, the one thing that I have really struggled with for so long, this person doesn't see me like that. I think it feels more effective if we already got some hint or idea of that being something that plagues the character beforehand. Like the way Hero Look really liked Chopper right away, even though Chopper looked like a fucking monster. That means something because we already got to see how Chopper had been treated for looking like a monster. Same way, Saul not treating Robin any different for having a devil fruit. That meant something because we already got to see how the other kids bullied Robin for having a devil fruit. With the Sanji putting that moment, it's just a little bit... It's just so out of the blue. And it also almost makes no sense because everybody in One Piece especially on Whole Cake Island and Totoland, looks really, really weird. Pudding looks extremely normal compared to most people. Extremely normal compared to most people. So even just the idea that a third eye would be something that people bully her for is really, really out of left field. If we were in a normal society, maybe that's something that would make sense, but here it's just really out of left field. So that is the one aspect of the Sanji Pudding thing that I personally didn't care for. But I think everything else, the ideas behind it and how what Oda was able to do with those characters thematically, and I actually really like their final send-off moment, and the film reel aspect and everything, and what Pudding did. I liked a lot of it. As for my current order top 5 strongest, if I had to do something, gun to my head right now, it'd be too difficult. It'd be too difficult because now I'm caught between Dragon and Shanks. Like, Im's number 1 in my opinion. I'm caught somewhere between Dragon and Shanks. But then Mihawk is a really difficult figure because I don't know how to scale him to Shanks still. I think it's more... And then Blackbeard is really hard to place at the moment because Oda could really do anything with him. And then Luffy... Post Wano, it really felt like Luffy should be top 5, but I need to see him take out one of these Seraphim before I even start putting him back in that conversation, because I'm worried that this is going to be one of those things where Oda just starts writing Luffy really out of character, just doesn't address his... Like, he doesn't really write him the way he wrote him in Wano from here on. So, the top 5 is too hard for me at the moment. It really is. Top 3 favorite Chainsaw Man characters. Makima was my favorite character. Makima, Denji now, and Asa, obviously. Those are my top 3 favorite. Actually, Power is my favorite. It's too hard. I don't know. I'd say I'd go with those top 3, but, if Power starts appearing more in the story again, then we got another conversation. Narrator says Garp launching a ship on land is him saying he has no plans to leave. That's a good point. Well, he could just throw his ship back. In a rescue situation, it doesn't make tactical sense, except as a statement. I think he could just throw it again. Like, he can... I feel like Garp could throw his ship and then jump and then land on it. Kind of like Tao Pai Pai from Dragon Ball. Nino Smith says Pell could have been doing a conjure or hiding his power. Even if not... But why? It's just like the whole kingdom is at stake. There's nothing, literally nothing in terms of higher stakes than what is happening in Alabasta right then. Nothing even close. He loses to Robin. Then he comes back, clearly, like, legitimately injured to fight Robin in the desert. And then she's like, you're too weak. Help Luffy instead. He doesn't help Luffy fight Crocodile. He's just Luffy's ride to fight Crocodile. Like, his king is about to die. Why would he... There's just no reasons ever for Pell to be stronger than he seemed. If not, don't you think there should be more spies? Do you think we've met any undercover? I mean, there's the argument that, like, shouldn't there be more bounty hunters? I mean, you could always make the argument that it would be nice or maybe a bit more realistic, but I think Oda is constructing the world with already so much stuff, already so many nuances, already so many factions and factions within factions. You can only expect him to do so much, right? The bar is already so high with One Piece. JWP says Haki stocks keep rising. Yeah, Blackbeard looking a little fraudish with some of the Conqueror's attacks we've been seeing. I mean, that's the point, isn't it? That's why Blackbeard is pursuing so many devil fruits, right? If he can get, I would say even right now he has arguably the 2 strongest fruits, or 2 of the strongest fruits in existence. Even now, he's still probably a little bit short of someone like Shanks or Kaido, right? So to put him over the edge, that's why the idea of Haki being so supreme matters so much, because if anything, Blackbeard provides us such a nice contrast in that he needs you can't get to the top level with just 1 really good fruit, or even just 2 really good fruits. Blackbeard would need like 3 really, really good fruits to get to the level of, the greatest pirates, basically, right? That's my thought process, but we also might be underestimating Blackbeard's Haki because he did block an attack from the Mihawk Seraphim that cut a mountain. So he's at least got armament Haki that's pretty good. Isaiah Davis says, what are the odds of we get Shadow Asgard Moria versus San Juan Wolf? That'd be cool. Odin's legacy was built on wiping out the giants. People forget this. Shadow's Asgard Moria, the attack that he used, I think, like, people talk about how Prime Crocodile was probably really strong. Prime Moria was probably an absolute beast. Because Shadow's Asgard, what Moria did with Shadow's Asgard, he literally split a full island. That is the strongest punch that we have seen in One Piece. Till Luffy's King Kong, till Luffy's King Kong gun. Till Luffy's King Kong gun, that is the strongest punch we've seen in One Piece. A punch that splits the island. Shadow's Asgard, and people think I'm lying. Go look at the chapter again. What he did there was absurd. The whole thing that was built up, the reason Luffy was able to beat Shadow's Asgard was because Moria couldn't control it. He was literally spitting out shadows. Reason being, Moria is way past his prime. He hasn't fought in a long time. Prime Moria, if he could control that form, would be one of the strongest characters. Not like a top tier, like Admiral Yonko or like, you know, that type of thing level. But he would be fitting. Like, he would not be out of place among those other Shichibukai. He really, really wouldn't. I'm going to pull up this panel in case people just don't believe me. The feat is absurd. It is something that we just didn't see for the rest of the story. For a long, 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 long time. It is actually really, really crazy. I think it was chapter 485 or 2 or something like that. Let's see. Let me see. Like, look at this. Because remember what Nightmare Luffy did, right? Nightmare Luffy was absurdly strong. Shadow's Asgard was 10 times the amount of shadows. And it really showed. So this punch, look at this punch. This punch is stupid. Like, this is, when do you see shit like this, right? This isn't till post-time skip stuff that we're actually seeing attacks like this. It is a really, really crazy attack. It doesn't do anything to Luffy because Moria doesn't use Haki. If you don't use Haki, then no amount of physical damage is going to do anything to Luffy, right? Like, Luffy even explains, like, this is the big thing that's emphasized. Moria can't fully control 1,000 shadows. He's just leaking shadows all the time. He doesn't have full strength, right? So, a direct hit, that punch split the island, Straw Hat, right? So, it is a punch that splits the island. The only reason it doesn't do anything, like, you won't be crushed, how can you say that? You're just revealing your lack of experience, is because I'm made of rubber. So, people don't think about it that much, but this is essentially the equivalent of the Luffy NL situation, where it doesn't actually matter how strong the attack is. Luffy's ability is just a hard counter, right? Moria is actually the first and only character in all of pre-time skip One Piece I can think of that is, that really emphasizes how good Luffy's resistance to blunt force is. Because, against any other character, they probably, like, any other, if it was any other, like, normal pre-time skip character or whatever, they would just die from being punched by Moria in Shadow's Asgard. This is very much a Luffy NL situation where lightning doesn't affect him because he's rubber. Physical force, no matter to what degree, does not affect him because he's rubber, right? You need to have Haki on that, or something like, besides that, without Haki, every other one of his past opponents, Lucci had to use his nails, Crocodile had to use a hook, right? Arlong had to use his sword or his jaws, his teeth, stuff like that. Moria is the first character that's kind of, like, actually broken and really OP in terms of physical strength that Luffy fights pre-time skip. It doesn't work because he's rubber. And then Luffy wins because Moria literally can't control his abilities. But Moria is very, very, very strong. Like, Prime Moria is likely one of the stronger pirates of the previous generation. But, you know, he's just never... So, like, if he came back and was reintroduced to the story, maybe joining Cross Guild or something, and we got to see a polished version of Shadow's Asgard, it'd be really strong. Moria's underrated because he's a bitch. I would agree. Hawkbox says, kiss one, slap one, marry one. Okay, slap one, marry one. Kiss one, slap one, marry one. This is actually a great question. Yamato, Perona, Bonnie. Yamato's too annoying, is the thing. I couldn't marry her. I think I'd marry Bonnie. I think I just dislike Yamato too much. I can't get over it. I think Yamato is the, like, just in pure terms of most attractive female characters Oda has ever drawn, Yamato's up there, at least for me personally. But I think I would literally go slap Yamato just because she just wouldn't shut the fuck up about Odin, right? And she'd be telling me she's Odin, which is just not an attractive thing to hear from a woman, right? So probably slap Yamato, kiss Perona, marry Bonnie. I think that's what I got. Nah, Perona, maybe? I don't know. Scholar H says, Blackbeard fruits may let him mimic S-tier Haki. Thoughts? Yeah, I mean, the Gura Gura no Mi essentially does that. So that's something, you know. Naruto, because a lot of people were saying, oh, Garp's punch, it's like the Gura Gura no Mi, but just with Haki. So it's like, okay, well, Blackbeard just has the Gura Gura no Mi. So, you know. Naruto Nick says, I feel Sword is Garp's crew without being a crew. Yeah, it is cool that Garp's got a crew, essentially. Narrator says, Blackbeard's awakening will be able to take away Haki. It can't. If it does that, then everyone just loses. I can't imagine that being a possibility. Because then Devil Fruits don't work against him, and then Haki doesn't work against him. Hey, maybe some of that famous sword skill that Mihawk's got will do the trick, you know? Maybe it really is all coming down to sword skill, you know? Instead of Haki Man, it's just a pure sword skill battle. But seriously speaking, Haki should be able to do something, otherwise it's just, there's nothing that would work against the dude, right? Bassam El Madawi says, if you withstand Conqueror's Haki, you should have a strong will. I mean, Beppo, like, a lot of the random fodder in Law's crew withstood a Conqueror's Haki blast. I don't think, you know, you've got a fine will, it's just, it's nothing crazy. It's better than average, basically, right? Narrator says, how do you feel about Oda opening up the One Piece world, IP to spin-offs, prequels, and sequels, like Lucas with Star Wars universe with books and such? I mean, if it's really good stuff, I would like it. It's just, the tricky thing is that the potential for those things to really screw with the story and taint a lot of what was done previously, I'd say, like the new Star Wars content has done, that's generally higher than the potential to enhance, right? That's the thing. So that's what I'm wary of. But so far, if you'd asked me this like 6 months ago, I'd have just been blanket, like, that shit's terrible. And it's almost always terrible because it's lower effort. It's often an effort also to extend things that don't need to be extended just for cash, which can almost never be good and pretty much is exclusively going to create holes or diminish aspects of what came before to create hype for what's coming out now, right? But the Ace novel manga I thought was phenomenal. Like, I really, really, really thought that was good. I thought that's just as good as the main story. And honestly, the character writing in that is better than most character writing you get in the average One Piece arc. So, in my opinion, if everything manages to be of that quality, I'd be happy with it, but I'd be very wary of it in general. Mechlor says, Blackbeard's darkness can absorb anything, right? What if he can absorb Haki? Thanks for the 10. I mean, I'm still on the same page of just, if he can absorb Haki, doesn't everyone just lose? Who wins? Who beats him? Maybe just an insane amount of Haki or something? Maybe that's the answer. Taylor Russell, thanks for the 12. I was watching Fishman Island with some friends, and half of us that are caught up freaked the fuck out near the end when Pudding was shown with her 3 eyes. Oda's foreshadowing game, 100. Okay. You guys were freaked out, but I don't remember everybody really being like, oh my god. Like, I think a lot of people are interested because it's something new that we haven't seen. But if you look at Whole Cake Island and Totterland as a whole, it's just like, there's so many more weirdos than just someone with 3 eyes. She looks fairly normal compared to the average person on that island. You know what I mean? Reflexy, thanks. Oda must have put a lot of thought for Mihawk versus Zoro. I hope so. There's no place better for Zoro to beat Mihawk and become the best swordsman other than Wano. I don't know if Mihawk's even heard of Wano. I don't know if that's happening in Wano. Maybe. Modi Eunice says, "Is the Clay a Logia?" I didn't get the sense it's a Logia, but it could be. There are Logias that are less significant, you know, like the Snow Fruit and things like that go to lesser characters, as we've seen. JWP, thanks for the 5. End of story, Master Swordsman, Zoro negatives, Haki stealing Blackbeard using the sword skills he copies from Mihawk in their duel using his hidden eye. Yes, that is the ultimate Zoro fantasy. Okay, guys. Oh, shit, we could get the stream likes to 1,000. Let's get the stream likes to 1,000. That'd be crazy. Let's do that. Boruto doesn't exist. Hey, wait, actually, hold on. There was some I've seen people posting stuff about Boruto recently on Twitter. For the longest time, I was just like, Boruto's stupid. I will never believe anybody that says anything good about Boruto. But I know the recent plot developments that have happened in Boruto. I've seen them. People have been posting them on Twitter. I'm not gonna lie. It looks interesting. I did not realize that was the direction that this story would ever go. I think that you guys know what I'm talking about? I think the twist or whatever that recently happened in the Boruto manga and the way it kind of flipped the script, it almost justifies the existence of this manga, if you know what I mean. Because it seems like, to me, from the outside looking in, without full context of exactly the nuances of the story or the character arcs and everything like that, but just the gist that I've been seeing from people talking about it online, explaining, oh shit, this is what's going on. It is a genuinely interesting concept, and I say it justifies the existence of the manga because it seems like it's a sort of look at the reverse of what the story of Naruto was. And I think that there is merit to writing a story like that. You know what I mean? I think that is one of the few cases that a sequel would make sense. So my question is the Boruto manga good right now? Or at the very least heading in a direction that seems like it has potential? Or at the very least more interesting than it was before? Like, genuine question. Like, don't just comment to shit on it just to shit on it. I like to give things a fair shake, a fair shot. When I started reading, oh, this is what's happening, and I saw what people were saying about it, and kind of trying to open-mindedly listen to people who are saying why this is a good development and why this is a very fresh development, I could see the point, and I thought that that's a very surprising and high potential direction for that story. Alito 5, 1 out of 2. Actually, I ran into Morj earlier today. He was helping an old lady cross the street, thank you. I went to compliment him, but suddenly pulled out a gun. Okay, I don't know if I want to read the second part of this. Okay, where's the second part of this? 2 out of 2. He then proceeded to mug me and the old woman, pistol whipping me in the process. Can't see out of my right eye now. Keep up the good work, Morj. But notice he did not say that I pistol whipped the woman. So, points there, right? I mean, nobody listened to him. I didn't do either of those things. Yusuf Hegab, welcome to the Yonko. Okay, let's see. Okay, let's see. People are asking what happened. I don't want to... Don't nobody care, just spoil it. I mean, I don't think I... Okay. Boruto is not real. I like Boruto. Someone's saying Kishimoto's cooking right now, fam. Boruto trash. What's happening? The plot twist was dope. Morj just spoil it. No one cares. Austin saying stop hating on Boruto. Kishimoto's writing it now. Yeah, but we hate on Naruto and Kishimoto wrote that. That twist right now is kind of good. Hope it gets better. Gambling says, wait, what the fuck? Kishi cooking again? Yeah, hasn't done that since the Pain arc. Adrian Akeen says it's a big shakeup, but it doesn't make the series good like many Boruto fans will have you believe. Yeah, but does it give it the potential to be something of substance? Boruto Fire makes stuff in Shippuden make more sense too. I don't know about that. Boruto's solid. I'm a little behind on the anime. Okay. Should I just spoil it? Should I just spoil it? I don't know if I can even spoil. Okay. Okay, how about I spoil it? I'm gonna I'm gonna spoil it, and you have 45, 40. How long would it take me to spoil it? I don't even know the names of the characters. I know Boruto's name and then the other dude's name. I'm just gonna call him New Sasuke. All right. So, I'm gonna spoil it. 30 seconds. 40. I think people don't care enough, right? You guys don't care. If you guys care about Boruto and you're in this stream, just shame on you. Oh, thanks for the 1,000 likes. All right. So the story of Boruto, as far as I understood it, was something like Boruto. He's Naruto's kid. We knew that part, right? So Boruto is the child of Naruto. Naruto named him Boruto. I'm trying to move along to the important stuff. Boruto is a very spoiled kid, and he's a shitty kid. He cheats on the Chunin exams. That's not that important, but that's about as far as I got in the story personally. Boruto's just a shitty kid. He's a shitty, spoiled, entitled kid. As far as I understand, the initial parts of the story are him just becoming less shitty, probably, or something. And then he does some good stuff. The writing is probably overall dumb, but as far as I understand, he does some good stuff, and then he's being called the hero of the village. At the same time, there is another character with a very absurd design. It's like the most emo, edgy kid design ever, and he's the new version of Sasuke, right? We'll call him Sasuke 2. So you got Boruto, the spoiled golden boy, the son of Naruto, the Hokage, who loves paperwork, and then you've got Sasuke 2.0, edgelord Sasuke, basically. So you've got the rivals, I assume, and Sasuke is shitty, and Boruto is good, and everybody loves Boruto. So here's the good stuff, right? It's kind of the opposite of Naruto. Everybody loves Boruto. Boruto's the golden boy. I think Boruto even starts being called a hero as the story progresses because Boruto probably does some good stuff. I think he defeats one of the Kaguya ripoffs. Boruto's being called a hero, golden child of the village, and then shitty Sasuke 2.0 is the one that everybody hates, right? He's like, they don't like him, okay? And then here's the big twist, okay? So it seems like a dumb, boring, pointless story, but something happens, and I don't fully understand what, but some crazy genjutsu magic happens. Keep in mind, we basically have to call it magic at this point because they're so fucking far beyond the idea of ninjutsu. Remember back when it was like Kakashi versus Zabuza, and you know they have to do 15 different hand signs or whatever just to summon like a little water snake or something? We're way beyond that. So some crazy magic happens, and then it's kind of like a Aladdin genie sort of moment where the whole world sort of flips upside down and reality gets bent and everything gets swapped. Okay, so you remember Boruto's the golden boy, everybody likes him, and then Sasuke 2.0 is the shitty kid that everybody in the village hates, and they're all like, fuck you, you suck, right? The two characters swap. So suddenly, Sasuke 2 it's like reality or history was rewritten, kind of like that one arc of Bleach that everyone didn't really care about. Reality was swapped, and suddenly Sasuke 2, it's as though history played out and he was Boruto all along. Okay, and now Boruto, everybody thinks of him the way they thought of Sasuke 2. So basically, suddenly reality's flipped, where basically Sasuke 2, all along everybody thinks like, well, he's the golden boy, he's Naruto's son or whatever. You know, he's the beloved child, the golden child of the village, the hero of the village, everybody loves him, etc. And then Boruto, who all his life has been this spoiled, entitled kid, just a shitty, spoiled, entitled brat, gets whatever he wants, golden boy of the village, everyone even starts calling him the hero of the village and everything like that. Suddenly his role gets swapped, and suddenly he's the outcast of the village. Nobody remembers that he's actually Naruto's son. Nobody remembers that he's actually the golden boy of the village that they all like. They all view him the way they viewed Sasuke 2.0, okay? So, does that make any sense? I don't know if I explained that well. Just imagine reality swapped. It's the prince and the pauper sort of situation, but reality swapped, and now the life that the prince lived was, in fact, reality has been changed, that he lived the pauper's life, and everybody views him like the pauper. Yeah, basically just reality swap. Now, the reason I say this is interesting is because, and why it justifies the story of Boruto somewhat, is because, at least in my head, right? And I haven't read the actual writing, the character nuances to fully understand this, but it's an interesting take, at least from the way people are talking about it, because if you go back and look at the original story of Naruto, right? Story of Naruto was basically a kid that was the outcast, that was hated by the entire village and everything like that. And then he grew into the hero of the village that everybody came around to, came to love, all of that stuff, right? Sasuke had the opposite story in that he was kind of the golden boy of the village. Everybody was like, he's the genius, he's the coolest kid in the class, right? He's the prodigy or whatever, right? And then over time it was like, well, he's the shittiest fucking person of all time. Let's all hunt him down because he's a terrible person, right? So Naruto went from outcast to hero and beloved. Sasuke went from the cool guy everybody loved to outcast, right? So they got that swap. Boruto's the opposite story in that Boruto's the kid growing up kind of like the hero from the start, right? Golden child, everybody loves him. He's playing out, I guess, Sasuke's role, but even more elevated, right? In that he was the son of the Hokage and everything and just has had everything handed to him, right? And he's talented and all of that stuff, right? And he's going instead from golden child, loved by the village, etc., to now experiencing what it's like to be an outcast that everybody hates and everybody despises and everybody views as a villain or a criminal, etc., and nobody loves him and everybody hates him. I do think that that's an interesting story. It's basically a reverse of the original story of Naruto, right? It is arguably a more interesting story to explore almost. Well, I mean, it's hard to say what's more interesting, right? But on paper, that's a unique idea. I think it's one of the only ways you could follow up the story of Naruto while having some new angle on it that feels fresh and feels like you can... It's a very interesting what if to explore that you can get into all of the ideas that the first one didn't, if that makes sense. That being said, I don't know what the actual like micro level writing and how all of this is playing out looks like. I don't know what the chapters are like. I don't know what it's like to read a chapter to chapter. I know the artwork is the worst thing anyone has ever put to paper, but I think it's interesting. Miguel B says, oh good, parallels, just what Boruto needed. No, because I think that the different, like, obviously it's still working on parallels, but, like, with this you can explore the opposite story, right? So, it's not the same as a parallel, right? I feel like with Naruto, the parallels are so heavy-handed in that it's the same thing just playing out over and over. It's the same exact dynamics playing out and over and over. This is the reverse dynamic, right? Oh, people don't think that was interesting? I think it's interesting. I also think that people are kind of just like very biased against Boruto. So that's fair. I don't think that people want to hear anything that potentially says that it could have an interesting idea for the story. But I guess the simplest way to put it would be like, if you're doing the story of One Piece again, right? Like let's say we're following the story of Luffy's kid. The boring route would basically be if we're following the story of like someone that wanted to be Pirate King again, right? Or was just following in his father's footsteps. I think that's the boring route, right? I think you make room for a sequel when you have a totally different set of ideas that you can potentially explore. So if you had a kid for Luffy, but you had a way to basically explore, okay, what if he had to go through everything Luffy didn't? That's, I think, an interesting idea. I think that that's an interesting idea for a story. You get what I'm saying? Yeah, my explanation probably took the hype out of it because I couldn't, like, seriously talk about it in my head because it's still Boruto. But by the time I got to the stuff, I like remembered like, wait, I'm supposed to be talking about why it's good. So I probably shouldn't have been as joking about it while I was building it up and talking about how stupid it is. But I can't resist that. Yeah, I'm not gonna read Boruto to confirm. I'm not doing any Boruto reviews. I'm not gonna read it. That's the thing. Because it's just, but I am gonna keep up with whatever people say happens in Twitter. That's what I got at this point. Okay, guys. This was a good stream. I do want to eat dinner now. I am hungry. I will talk to you guys later. Mike Paradise asked reading part 9. I'm going to catch up on part 9 chapters once a few accumulate. That's where I'm at. But yeah, thanks for tuning in, guys. Really, really good chapter. I'm going to eat now. Yeah, I'm going to eat now. Basically, that's it. Record the chapter review and everything like that. But thanks for tuning in. This was a lot of fun. I will talk to you guys later. Peace.